And welcome back to Beer Field. I am your host at Hot BFF with 2Ps. As always, joined by my esteemed, lovely, almost done with his retail job, so we don't have to do these late as hell at night, co-host Dan Thury.
What's up, everybody? Yeah, one day left at Benny's, and then I get to go on and start my career for Distill Brewing as a sales rep. So I get to actually go back to kind of like a 9-to-5 job, except it's my own schedule, and I get to drive a shit ton. And
he gets to see me more.
Festivals. I'll get to see Kris more, and we get to open up a lot more doors, and you guys get to hear some more interesting conversations around beer and my travels.
His actual favorite part of that, though, is that he gets to see me more. Don't let him fool you.
That is probably the biggest benefit, is I get to see you.
At Beerfield FF on Twitter, if that's how you want to interact with us. Beerfield Fantasy Football on YouTube, all of our shows live, ask questions live, like, subscribe, hit the notification icon. We got a solid show for you here today. It's finally draft season, so we're super excited about that. Draft season is one of our favorite seasons, so as always, we will be live streaming the first round on our YouTube channel only, so won't be a show that week. There'll just be the YouTube live stream of the first round. We'll get really drunk. We'll have a bunch of people come in. It'll be a good time. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube, like, hit the notification icon, and come hang out with us for NFL Draft Night. Today, we're going to be talking quarterbacks and running backs. We're going to be doing it in roundtable fashion, which means that to have a roundtable, you got to have more opinions than just Dan and mine. So we have two guests that we're super excited for. We have Sam Wagman. He's a writer for 4th and John, a contributor at the 14P_pod, and host of at the show FF. Sorry, I totally screwed that up. Hype your own stuff. It's easier when you do that. What's up, Sam?
What's going on, Kris? Dan, how you guys doing tonight?
I'm good.
In the dream.
I'm making it. We're surviving. A little bit of a scratchy throat. That's the other reason Dan's gonna run. Allergies have been kicking my ass for the last couple of days. So.
Yeah,
it's fun.
I'm excited. Draft season's one of my favorite times of the year. Gives me a chance to, kind of dig into everything. And this is really the first year I've really done more than the surface level. So, getting to know those guys outside of the top 3 or 4 has been great for me. And it really helps me improve my knowledge of the game because, just getting deeper and deeper into the sport that, now, obviously, fantasy football is not just all about the top guys. It's about all the surface guys or the under the surface guys as well. So I really just enjoy it. And, quarterbacks and running backs are two of my my best that, I know. So I'm really just happy to be here and everything.
Perfect.
Awesome. Yeah, we're happy to have you. And we love draft season because you get to plant your flags on guys. And then a year you get bragging rights or you get to make fun of yourself. And it's fun either way.
Absolutely.
Perhaps even more exciting. It's been way too long since we've done an episode with this guy. From the Superflex Show and Superflex City and DLF football and probably a hair care commercial or two. We have John Hogue with us. John, hello.
No hair care commercials yet. I'm still working on that one. Working my way up the body, I guess. But I finally make it onto the Beer Field podcast.
It's been too long.
It's crowning achievement of his fantasy football career. I'm sure that's what he'll tell you after this.
Yeah. There's a long and storied tradition of Superflex Super Show hosts making it onto the Beer Field podcast, and finally my name comes up. Well, I got to meet you guys in Canton.
Yep.
Two of my favorite dudes in this industry. And but I told you then I kind of had a feeling that the reason I hadn't been on yet was because I can't have gluten, which is a very makes it kind of tough to drink.
So fun fact, we started doing more than just beer here a year or so ago too. So I mean,
yeah,
it's whatever
some
you
gluten-free
can get.
beer though. So
awesome.
Yes, I won't give
great.
it away yet.
I'm so proud of you. And like
it's gonna taste like crap, but whatever.
I have no clue why it took us this long to get you on. Like
it's just one of those things we try to rotate through, and we just Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why, but Canton was fun. Are you gonna be there again this year?
Man, I don't know.
Even just like to hang out. I mean,
Man,
we're definitely gonna be there.
I booked my ticket in my hotel. I just haven't booked the plane ride yet. But
I haven't booked the hotel.
Coming?
I haven't booked the hotel yet. We booked the booth.
I can't wait. Honestly, It sounds fun. It sounds fun as hell.
Dude,
It was
it's
such
a
a great
blast.
time.
It is fun.
Yeah, we've been to multiple. So we went to
Dallas.
the one in Dallas or the one in Fort Worth a few years ago, and then 2 years ago we went to Bob. So the expo, and that's obviously where we met John for the first time in person. But
We're gonna try to get people other than just the fantasy headliners onto an in-person show. It seems like it's been them every time, which is awesome. We love Kyle and Jake, but yeah, make that a bigger show.
We'll get more on for sure.
Absolutely.
All
All right. Well, you heard John mention it. We got beer, so let's talk about beer.
Stop.
What's fueling Beerfield?
Dan, why don't you go ahead and start and set the crown example for how you intro a beer?
All right, I am drinking Sunless Sea from Jackie O. Sunless Sea is a double stout brewed with lactose and brown sugar, aged in American whiskey barrels or whiskey casks for 19 months. It's also conditioned on vanilla beans, almonds, cardamom, cinnamon, and coriander.
Was that an intentional throwback to Canton because John's here? Because that's the first time I had Jackie O's was when we were in Canton. We picked it up at that grocery store.
We'll call it just a happy coincidence. We actually got this in today at work, and it's expensive, but I was like, fuck it. Like,
It's draft season. This is when we go balls
frickin'
out.
Draft season. We got guests on. I can't show up to the podcast with another fucking double IPA. So we gotta bring down the big boy. It also clocks in at 13.1%. And
Wow.
first couple sips, there's a lot of shit going on in this beer. When you're throwing this many adjuncts and aging on this stuff, there's a lot of things going on.
I thought I'd have the strongest thing here, and you beat me by 1%. Or by 0.1%. Sam, what do you got?
Well, my friends are more of craft beer aficionados than I am. I'm more of a nice domestic, Yingling type of guy.
Yingling's
but tonight I pulled out a Golden Monkey for you guys. It is a Belgian style triple ale with an added spice. Clocks in at 9.5%. Tastes really good. And then I also have this peanut butter chocolate milk stout brewed by Lost Coast, and it's peanuts, cocoa, coffee, raisins, and toffee, and it really tastes good.
Awesome. We'll get into the full reviews of that later. I've had that Lost Coast one, by the way.
We've also
it's
had the Victory.
Pretty. Oh yeah, we've had the
Golden
Victory
Monkey.
before. Golden Monkey Victory does good
Golden
beer.
Monkeys are good. Golden Monkey's good.
It's one of those things that you don't think about too much because you can get it almost any time, anywhere, and there's so much other stuff that pops up. But man, it's good to go back to Old Reliable every now and again.
Absolutely.
John, you got some gluten-free beer, which will be a first for the show, but not a bad thing because I'm sure that you're not alone in the gluten intolerance category.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, it seems like it's becoming a little bit more widely accepted, but I will say, I mean, you guys sound awesome, and this is kind of bullshit. Like all the best things in life have gluten in them, pretty much. So
That's true. Beer, pasta.
You're getting robbed.
Zach Wilson.
Yeah, beer, whiskey, vodka, some vodka, most vodka.
Zach Wilson.
Jesus Christ.
We're starting already.
Oh, here we go, boys.
Nice. But I did find a couple local breweries here in Colorado that actually take gluten intolerance serious, because this is a very serious issue that affects millions of Americans every day. So I've got an IPA from Bootstrap Brewing Company, and it's only 7.6%. Man, and that's about as high as it gets for gluten-free beer.
That's pretty high for gluten-free.
Yeah, I think the gluten must hold the the alcohol content up there a little bit. But this also says it's made with Rocky Mountain glacial water. So anybody who's seen Waterboy knows that there's some special powers in that. So
I had
high quality H2O.
and there is. I
Absolutely.
had a whiskey that was made with a splash of Rocky Mountain glacier water.
nice.
Breckenridge.
Secret
So,
powers.
yeah.
You develop the ability, to tackle anybody, but also stutter. So it's like a double-edged sword.
So you're saying Drew Lock should play defense?
I'm saying Drew Lock might be a better linebacker.
All right.
He's got to be. He can't be any worse.
Can't be. Yeah.
Who
You
invited
guys
this
just-
guy?
I know you guys just had my guy Stompy on here talking up Drew Lock.
I'm team Stompy on that one, but kind of ironically.
I'm glad I got
Just so we're
support
clear, it's a
finally.
little ironically that I'm team Drew Lock.
Yeah, you're gonna hear the exact opposite from a Broncos fan tonight. I have absolutely no love for that guy. Dude blows.
I'm sure you're hoping Justin Fields falls to 9.
Oh god, that'd be awesome. It won't happen, but
It might.
man.
It might.
One of our listeners has an acronym for YOLO. You only lock once. He started in 1 week, probably at
Yeah.
my behest, and it did not go well.
This is streaming.
You
This is
also-
streaming. You only lock once during the season.
You only lynch once too, though. That's the problem.
Jesus.
Like,
Christ.
Holy hell!
But then
Did
don't
we-
take Lance. So it's what you guys cannot do is take Trey Lance then, because you can't keep the YOLO train going here.
yeah,
You can't
seriously.
only Lance once. Also,
Well, you
That's the
probably
problem, though.
can.
Like that's such a John Elway quarterback right there, though. Just like big, mobile, big arm, and can he read a playbook? I don't know.
We'll get there.
Possibly.
We will get there. Maybe. All right, I've got If You're Not Into Yoga from Illuminated Brewers. It is a white stout with coconut and pineapple, checking in at 13%. So I am not into yoga. I don't know if, just in
Oh, is
case
that
we're
the pecan
curious.
pie one? Oh, no, that's the white.
No, this is the white stout with pineapple
Yeah,
and
that
coconut.
one also is. It's got a lot of shit going.
It's a 13%er too, which is really high. It's an imperial white stout is what it is.
double.
I don't think they
Got
called that
2.5.
out, but it's definitely an imperial white stout at 13%. So
Makes sense.
we're bringing in the heavy hitters.
yeah,
It's a good
And
one.
that's not just a beer either.
No. All right, before we get to prospects, before we get into the draft, we got a couple news items to cover. So, first off, Julian Edelman announced his retirement. So, will not be returning to the Patriots. Oh, the knee injury the last couple of years. Very solid. One of the raging debates on Twitter that I've seen this week, though, is he a Hall of Famer? And I'm firmly in the no category. I think that immediately calling somebody a Hall of Famer after they retire is kind of a snap reaction for anybody that had a good career. And while Edelman had a good career and was steady, the argument that Hines Ward isn't in the Hall, so Edelman won't be. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Hines Ward was steady for longer and better at his peak, and just very good career. Not necessarily a Hall of Famer. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think the only way he gets in is based on his playoff performances, and he gets afforded the luxury of playing with Tom Brady and in the playoffs every fucking year that he's healthy. So he's not getting in on just his regular season stats. He's not getting in, and I don't think he has any Pro Bowls. Like, he has no actual single player accolades to his name outside of having some rings, obviously, which is done by the team. So I don't see how he gets in. Like, Patriot fans be damned. Like, you can argue about it all you want, but he's not getting in.
Wes Welker's not in, and he
Right?
basically created the whole, short white guy goes to the Patriots and produces heavily. He's the architect of that. If he gets in, then maybe there becomes an argument, but until that day, there is none. Because and I saw someone comparing Edelman to Eli Manning. That may have been the most foolish thing I've seen in a long time on Twitter, and it came from a couple of reputable people. which I thought was even more outlandish. But
Reputable.
yeah, reputable. But with Edelman, I mean, the guy, he was tied for 261st all time in touchdowns. I mean, he's not a Hall of Famer. He had a very good career, and he was the hero of a Super Bowl. I mean, that's it. So, no from me as well.
Yeah, there's just this crazy list, man, of wide receivers who are better than Julian Edelman who are not yet in the Hall of Fame. It's like we've got way too many guys to get. I mean, you guys just listed two of them, Welker and Hines Ward, but I mean, there's like I here in Denver. I mean, I always get the Bronco news at the top of my feed, but somebody made the point that Rod Smith has like almost twice as many career yards and receptions as Edelman, and I mean, he had just a far better career all around than Edelman, and he's not in. So it's like, you just there's kind of no real path. I don't think at this point.
Yep.
Okay, I'm with you. Take note, because landing spot matters for a lot of these guys we're going to talk about. The Falcons waived Ito Smith, adding him to Brian Hill and Todd Gurley to their offseason cuts. So that's their top three running backs that they've from last season that they cut. The only person they really brought in is Mike Davis, and they used to have Quadri Olsen, and then the signing of Cordero Patterson, which is more a special team signing. So they're going to do something, and they're going to be a prime landing spot to where even if they don't spend high draft capital on a Williams, an ETN, or a Harris, that who you're going to be interested in whoever lands there. So it's just, don't really have to discuss it. Just something I wanted to mention as they're planning to reform that backfield, it would appear. So
Absolutely.
Landing spot's going to be cool there. And Cardinals signed James Conner to a 1-year deal, $1.75 million. With Chase Edmonds back there. I mean, what's the feeling on James Conner to Arizona? Me personally, not a giant fan of that move.
Don't care. Like,
You put it perfect.
there's a chance he could get cut like before the season starts. Like, we talk about these vets that had some fantasy value beforehand, and they get some hype behind it, and then they end up getting cut in August.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be shocked if Connor falls in line with that, especially if they go running back with maybe their second round. Obviously, they don't have a third round pick, but if they go RB in the first round or two, like, I don't give a shit about James Conner. If you have him in Dynasty, like, use this, I guess, small window to try to get off of him.
Yeah, for anybody that is hyped about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing I do like about it, I think Chase Edmonds was already, in line for a starting job, and the tough part for him was going to be surviving the NFL draft. Well, you sign James Conner, who's not a real threat. I mean, he's got to stay healthy in order to keep Chase Edmonds off the field. And that's just historically, that hasn't been something he's capable of doing. But it also makes it less likely that they take a running back in the draft. So, I think if you do have Chase Edmonds on your roster, I think you feel a little bit better about that with James Conner rather than, one of these
top backs.
tier
Yeah,
running
because
backs
they may add somebody, but it's not going to be somebody
It's
from the
likely
top
day
tier.
3. Yeah, it's likely going to be day 3. Like, without them having their third round pick, which was a very popular, pick to be used for a running back for them.
Yeah,
It just makes more sense, and with Connor at least having some ability to handle a workload in short spans, that it should point to them being likely taking another Benjamin type day 3 pick.
And you've got a rushing quarterback that can make good on design runs to go with Chase Edmonds. You bring in James Conner. If you add a day 3 pick to that's your backfield, and they may have a path to carries, but it's not a path to bell cow work. So
I'd personally rather bet that James Conner will be injured by the time the season rolls around than bet on him getting any actual legitimate work. I'm with Dan.
He's already hurt.
Not to be getting cut. They'll probably add some day 3 talent. There's Benjamin. I don't think played a snap last year.
No.
Yeah,
I think he's a stash. He's a stash. Like he's there in name only.
Yeah.
Like he's not an actual part of that team. And I like Chase Edmonds to have a starting job to himself. I mean, you're kind of getting him at a value, at this point in the spring. So,
I mean,
as long as he survives the draft, they should be fine. But I don't see the Cardinals using any of their picks on the top 3 guys right now.
no, not at all. Not in the least bit. By the way, James Conner's already hurt. He hurt his toe in a 4-wheeler accident.
Yeah, I saw that. That was was that the injury from last year?
I think so.
Okay, so he said he had surgery on that, so he's
in the
still
off
recovering
season
from that. Yeah, he's still recovering from that. Like the fact that it was an ATV accident, like just it made me laugh when I heard it on the radio the other day.
James Conner, he's just in a constant, like perpetual state of recovering. It's
Exactly.
he's either hurt or like there's this like small window where he's actually fully healthy, and then it's on to injured and then recovering from just now for the next, however many months. It's like it's nonstop with that guy. I don't like the injury prone.
If it fits, it fits though, right?
Sometimes it just fits, and with James Conner, I mean it's just there. That's all there is to it.
Yeah,
and it
just
was a
doesn't
nice
have
story.
to be that hard.
It was a nice
Yep.
story.
It was.
But him coming back from being in cancer treatment and everything, and
yeah, no, it was.
backing up Le'Veon Bell when he sat out and everything, and having an awesome season. But he's so injury prone. He cannot stay healthy. I just don't see that changing.
Right.
And he's not efficient. Like you saw what happened to the running game for Pittsburgh once their offensive line took a shit. We
Right.
constantly talk about Arizona
Well,
having a below average offensive line, and
yeah, we could get into that though, in scheme, and that's kind of why I don't like the James Conner signing, is because for Arizona, they're going to want to spread it out, and he's not the back you think of when you operate in space. I mean, you could see him in a Jordan Howard type role, essentially.
he's gonna steal all the touchdowns
God.
Yeah.
for the
You're
10
gonna
games
give
that
me-
he plays.
You're gonna give me some like traumatic memories of mentioning Jordan Howard.
I'm a Bears
I just don't
fan.
forget. I'm an Eagles fan. We have the same
Okay,
issue.
cool. Yeah, we got the same issues. There's a support group that meets on Thursdays.
We have the same issues. So
Dan, take it away.
All right, guys, let's get into the meat and potatoes, as we say in the show. Rookie quarterbacks we'll start with. So first question here, and again, I'm teeing off these questions as roundtable discussion. So top 5 quarterbacks, right? That's what everyone's been talking about. We're going to start off with those, and then we'll move into the guys beyond that. But we kind of know who the top 5 are. If you guys have anybody else that really isn't a part of that, but you want to talk about, we'll get there shortly. But I want to start with us talking about our top 5. We'll say who they are. We'll give a brief explanation. Then once all 4 of us have gone, we'll round table and discuss rankings and why people are aware. So, Sam, we'll start off with you. Why don't you give me your top 5, and then if you want to explain anything, by all means.
all right, so I'm gonna go by tier. I
Perfect.
got Trevor.
Yeah, good call.
Trevor's in his own tier. Then I have Fields in his own tier. Then I have Wilson and Lance in their own tier, and then I start a new tier after that, and that tier consists of Kyle Trask, Jamie Newman, and Mac Jones.
Okay.
But I have Trask at the top of that tier.
Oh, Hopper, keep it in your pants, buddy. You finally found someone who likes Kyle
Trask. Yeah,
And this has not as much to do with the fact that I am a Gators fan as it seems. It more has to do with the fact that I am not a Mac Jones fan.
That's fair.
And
we
the
only
reason I'm not
refer
a
to
Mac-
him as McCorkle on this show.
Yeah, he is McCorkle Jones.
The only reason I am not a McCorkle Jones fan is because the arm strength is trash. The pocket, the mobility is not there. And the fact that nobody's seen him do anything without a bunch of elite options around him makes me very wary of a Mitch Trubisky type, one-hit wonder season. So Kyle Trask showed me more. He's got a better arm. The only person he had on this team that was elite was Kyle Pitts, as we all knew. And though he has a tendency to, chuck it around the field and maybe force some bad plays, I think he can be ironed out with time, and he's got incredible pocket presence. So I really do like Kyle Trask, and I'm teetering. Jones is at 6, but Newman's right there. I'm a big Jamie Newman fan. I can thank Thor Nystrom for turning me on to that.
Oh yeah, he is a big Newman fan.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
John, why don't you give our beautiful audience your top 5?
Yeah, mine's mostly chalky, but I will say, Trevor Lawrence, number 1, obviously.
Yeah.
For me, though, like legitimately, Zach Wilson is my number 2. I like the way his skill set translates to the pro game. It's like there's mobility there, but he spent the time kind of honing the passing on the run. He, to a point where he doesn't lose velocity on the ball. He doesn't lose accuracy, even when he's thrown across his body. I prefer that to these guys who are just going to take off and run in the face of pressure. I like the fact that he's more extend the play, scramble to extend the play, but still looking down the field, looking to throw, and has absolutely no fear when it comes time to throw into a tight window. So I don't like the landing spot. Like it looks like we're pretty set with him going to the Jets. That hurts a little bit, but it hasn't happened yet. So for the time being, he's still my number 2. Justin Fields number 3, Trey Lance number 4. I still have Mac Jones number 5. I am with Swagman on that, but on Mac Jones, it's just the fact that he's going to be a first-round pick and probably an early one.
Yep.
Just draft capital is just so important, especially at the quarterback position, that we have to go off of that a little bit.
Hopper, why don't you give the people yours? You can finally, I guess, reveal, even though
everybody should already know. So
have an idea.
I'm gonna go like Swagman here. I'm gonna give it in tiers. So, Trevor Lawrence is my 1 in his own tier, and I think that's chalky. That's unquestioned for most people. I do have Zach Wilson as my 2. But he is in the same tier as Justin Fields, and I'll get into what the difference is to me between those two in a minute, and why I have Wilson ahead of Fields. For everybody that listens to the show and has been listening for the past couple weeks, the thing that you need to know, and you can see it in our Zoom backgrounds on YouTube right now, Dan and I, if you listen to just what we say, it's going to sound like he hates Zach Wilson and I am in love with him, and I hate Justin Fields and he is in love with him. When in reality, we both have them right together in the same tier. It's just that's where we've decided that we're going to have this brotherly quarreling going on for the entirety of draft season, so that's what's going to happen. Beyond that, I got Mac Jones at 4 ahead of Trey Lance. I'll get into that in a minute as well. There's some things with Trey Lance that make me a little uncertain, even though the rushing upside and the athleticism is undeniable. Mac Jones is up there like John said, because of draft capital, though. I actually, from a film perspective, like Kyle Trask and Kellen Mond, both a little bit more than I like Mac Jones. I am very, very high from both a film study and a statistical perspective on Kyle Trask, but I need to see how that draft capital and how that landing spot shakes out, which is why I don't really lock in numerical rankings until after the draft. I have my tiers set up, but as far as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that'll happen after people get drafted, after we see where they go. I won't move people between tiers based on that, but I will move them around within tiers. So that's why there's a big tier kind of right now. So as far as the difference between Zach Wilson, though, and Justin Fields, from what I saw, they're both athletic. They both have great zip on their throws. They both move well. They both were very productive, good fastballs, mid-range. The difference is in how it appears that they process. And Zach Wilson appears to get through his reads quick and throw with very good anticipation, whereas Justin Fields appears to be a little bit slower to process the field, gets himself put under pressure a little bit more, ends up taking off and running a bit more, which is another difference for me. It will always, 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 always be a preference of mine to choose the guy that throws on the run versus the guy that just runs on the run. And that's another big difference between the two quarterbacks to me, is that Zach Wilson has throwing on the run down to an art, and Justin Fields is going to do it with his legs, which is good for fantasy. That's a personal preference of mine, though. When you have two athletic quarterbacks, give me the guy that keeps his eyes downfield and throws with a bit more anticipation than what Fields does, who I think is a little bit slower through his reads and a little bit more reactive. Overall, there's a reason they're in the same tier. That's likely not going to change a whole lot come draft day, where I think that there's not going to be a whole big bit of difference in draft capital. But that is what separates the two for me, is that ability on the run, what they do on the run, and then the anticipation that Zach Wilson shows over Justin Fields. Trey Lance, I am lower on him than most. And I've debated it and decided that I'm not going to come up higher on him kind of yet. Obviously, undeniably athletic, feet like a running back, is great through contact, he has good vision, works through reads well, does throw with anticipation, but the accuracy was a little bit inconsistent. I thought he struggled with the deep ball, especially in coverage. I thought that the fact that he somehow only threw one interception in college was just dumb luck in watching his film, that he didn't have more shit picked off, didn't have more turnovers. Statistical profile's up there, but lesser competition. I'm not going to harp on that too much. As a running quarterback, he doesn't have the Lamar Kyler type of game-breaking athleticism, outside slipperiness, make people miss. He runs more kind of like a power back, not shying away from contact, and really more so between the tackles than he does rolling outside, which to me is concerning at the next level. He had some inconsistencies when he was throwing on the move, and just that lack of kind of game-breaking, again, undeniably athletic, but if you're not Lamar or Kyler athletic, how well is that speed going to translate necessarily at the next level? Not being a quarterback, awesome, but I think it's going to be closer to what Fields and Wilson is than it is going to be some larger defining characteristic at that level. So, I just think that there's more holes in Trey Lance's game than a lot of people want to acknowledge because they love the athleticism. And I'm going to acknowledge that, and I'm going to put him a spot or two lower.
All right. Mine. So, Hopper, we're a little different on it. I actually have Fields and Lawrence in the same tier. So, just like with Swag and, with Hopper here, I do mine based off of tiers, and especially to do with Kris. Like, we don't really rank them until we see everything out. And I've never been a big fan of rankings for the last couple of years. I think tiers are just a better off, and it kind of protects you from the unnecessary arguments about a player above a certain player, and that just automatically means you hate said player below it. I think it's fucking stupid. I'm going to say this. I actually like my top five. I'm a huge fan of all five of them. It's the first time I feel like that has ever happened since we started doing this, and I feel like I have to now be the one that has to defend McCorkle, which I didn't think I would have to. So, but anyways, my tier one is going to be Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. It's always been that way for me. It's been that way for a lot of the Devy people that have followed them since coming out of high school, as both of these guys were both number one and number two recruits, not just quarterbacks, but recruits in the 2018 class. That speaks volumes, and I believe if Justin Fields would have actually started year one with Georgia before transferring to Ohio State, we would be talking about him in the same light, as at least as a whole, with Trevor Lawrence. So, there's a great article that I read that one of the Ohio State kind of beat writer guys spoke about when brought up the with the slow process, and he spoke as to why he thinks a lot of people see slow process when they evaluate Justin Fields, and he spoke to it the fact that, as he claims, Ohio State runs one of the hardest offensive schemes in college football. A lot of it's option reads, obviously RPOs, but it's also the wide receivers that run a lot of option routes. And then when you have to take these, 18, 19-year-old freshman receivers, especially at a time like in 2020 with COVID, a lot of guys opted out or getting hurt as Fields played without his top 3 receivers for most of the season. A lot of that timing can be messed up. It doesn't say that it's a full-on excuse, but it does kind of help explain to why his reads or his processing through his reads have been a bit slow. I think it's bullshit, the narrative that's been spun with him in the national media.
What is that narrative, by the way? Because I've missed that. I saw some things about, there's,
Orlovsky spoke.
Oh, yes. Okay, I did see that.
Like checking his sources, said he was not good in practice.
He was the last guy, his first guy.
Yeah.
Awful.
I disregarded that take entirely. So
as everybody should. But we're not going to get into that. So, and then my tier 2 does combine Lance Wilson and McCorkle himself. Mainly for the biggest part is that all 3 quarterbacks have only 1 year of actual dominance when they've played. Obviously, Zach Wilson's been a 3-year starter since he came in, struggled his first 2, and then was able to put it together in year 3 behind one of the nation's best offensive line, playing against suboptimal competition. Now, as Hopper and I have always debated about and agree with when it comes to Zach Wilson, his playmakers around him are fucking atrocious. Drops everywhere. His receivers, dog shit. But I believe all 3 of these quarterbacks, Lance, McCorkle, and Wilson himself, are going to likely have to sit a year to get adjusted to the actual NFL level with only 1 year of true dominant, especially for Lance, who took this year off, who I think has the most holes and has the most raw upside to him. You're taking Lance in fantasy because you believe that once he takes the field, at least the rushing upside will be there. And granted, it may not all come together. See Josh Allen. I've always been that Josh Allen and Zach Wilson, or Josh Allen and Trey Lance are more alike than Zach Wilson and Josh Allen. But the rushing upside is what should carry Lance early on, and he hoped that through his, the scheme adjustments and then through coaching that he can reach his potential. One of these guys is going to bust. And I've been on the train that Zach Wilson has the highest boom upside. I think his ceiling is incredible. But given his best comparable on player profile is Johnny Manziel and how he likes to play hero ball a lot, I think he's not going to get away with as much he was able to against some of the lesser competition that he faced while playing BYU levels of it. It's not his fault. Like he dominated who he was supposed to dominate. Like we can't fault him for that. So let's see how that translates to it. New York's going to give him that opportunity probably from day one with getting rid of Darnold. So you can't hate Wilson for the fact he's going to get on the field as early as week 1. And McCorkle, I think I really hate the fact that we have to that people view him as the most pro ready, even though he's played 1 full season with the best of the playmakers we've seen in a long time. Granted, he played against high levels of competition, of course. He played with Alabama. But he's still going to take time. He still has to learn through everything else on top of not having the elite athleticism that a lot of the other guys have in this class. So because of the non-rushing upside, McCorkle, it's almost in a tier of his own below that. But as John alluded to, he's going to get the draft capital. He's going to eventually start. You look at, a lot of these quarterbacks at least get a full season of starts before, we find out who they actually are in terms of what their longevity is. So we know we're going to get at least a full season of them. We can't speak to the same of that for guys like Kyle Trask and Jamie Newman and Kellen Mond, who are going to go day 2 or worse, day 3. And that's why I can't have those guys in the same tier. They're not going to get the opportunity that we know of right away unless they land into a good spot, just based on draft capital. So those are our top 5, top 6, 7-ish. We're going to kick it off to some discussions. Now, all of us had Trevor Lawrence at the top of their list. It's been unquestioned throughout the entire process. What I've seen and what doesn't get talked about a lot, and maybe this gets talked about more in national media, but I don't listen to that shit, is why is Trevor Lawrence the undoubtedly number one in his own tier? Most people don't talk about it. They just assume that he is. And I feel like that gets missed.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that on Twitter, and here's why. It's the combination of everything we like on the guys below him. You hear Josh Allen comps here and there. Lawrence reminds me more of anybody else of Josh Allen from an athleticism standpoint, from the way that he moves, the way that he looks running the football. I thought that the IQ was head and shoulders above everybody else from just kind of the natural sense you could see when he was playing the position, knowing when to step up, knowing when to move the pocket, knowing when to throw the ball away, sensing pressure. All of those things you have to do at the NFL level to be successful. Those senses are just there. He makes every throw accurate. It's on time. Doesn't matter if he's on the move or not. The arm strength is there to all levels of the field. So, the only two things I noticed with him is that occasionally the footwork gets out of whack and he has some throws that'll dive or sail, but it's not a consistent problem. It's not something that happens throw after throw, or like when he gets into that, it's going to keep going. It's just something that I noticed, and the only other knock on him, I swear I'm not going to make the same mistake by holding it against him, was the same knocks I had on Deshaun Watson, which is just the way that offense runs, which is purely out of shotgun and a lot of one read and RPO. Those are the only two knocks I had on him, is an occasional bad throw and the way that offense runs. Everything else just ticks the boxes at such a high level. There just aren't the questions there with him that I have with a Justin Fields, a Zach Wilson, a Trey Lance, or a Mac Jones.
Yeah, he's the most polished prospect out of all of these guys. He checks all the boxes. The most, they say he's the best prospect since Andrew Luck, and I really don't see anything that leads me to disagree with that. Everyone else has some sort of question. Fields has definitely risen a lot for me. For a while, I had Zach Wilson as my QB2, like John did, like Kris did. But for me, with Fields or with Trevor, there's just nothing that you can really pin on him that is bad. He has happy feet from time to time, but that's not necessarily a bad thing either. You want him to be ready to move, and he can run too. So, he really does check all the boxes, and I can't see anything that would lead, anybody to think right now, while we haven't seen him in any NFL action, that he would be anything less than the 101, because there's just nothing else that any of these other prospects can do to overtake him at this point. And that even, goes beyond some of the people in this community that have Fields at the 101 over him, guys like Christian Williams, who's outspoken in his Justin Fields love.
And he's leading that train. He's leading that train.
He really
Fields.
is.
He's been on that train for a long time. So
he backs it up. And he backs it up. He has the analysis that works for it. But for me, it's just you have to really dig deep to find anything bad about Trevor. And whatever off things you can find. Whether it's the fact that he ran out of a completely shotgun offense and he may not adjust well to a pro style offense, an NFL team will simplify that for him. They'll make it easy for him to adjust to, and he'll be able to run a pro style offense because he really does have a high football IQ from what we've seen. And he hasn't had the elite level of talent that guys like Mac Jones have had. Ooh, excuse me. But there's just nothing I can say bad about Trevor Lawrence. So, he's the easy 101.
Yeah, kind of the better conversation I think to have as far as Trevor Lawrence goes is like there's just kind of no real reason to question, his status as number one, not only for the NFL purposes but for Superflex dynasty purposes. Easily. But kind of the better question is like, how much better is he than these other quarterbacks? And that's the part that I think people maybe get a little bit lost in, is, this is a very polished prospect, likely can't miss type of prospect that doesn't come along very often. But this is a pretty deep quarterback class. So, there is a conversation to be had in terms of, dynasty value, fantasy football value, when you're talking about Trevor Lawrence versus these other guys. That's the only thing that these guys can really compete with him on, is the fact that they're significantly cheaper, and I don't know that they're going to be significantly worse than Trevor Lawrence.
It's a floor versus ceiling type value. Right. So to me, there is not a giant break between Trevor Wilson and then the Zach Wilson, Justin Fields tier. From film, statistically, there is not, no matter how I profile it, there's not a giant break there. The thing is that Lawrence's floor is, I don't want to say the same as the upside for Fields and Wilson, because I think that if Lawrence is only at his floor, that Fields and Wilson, we could look back and say, ended up better. But it just feels more sure. How often does a prospect come in and perform at what their ceiling is from day one, or even, long term? There's going to be some holes, statistically speaking. There's going to be some holes that show up, and that's kind of what you're betting on. The upside of Fields or Wilson, surely, definitely, it could put them up above that floor where Lawrence is. It's just, it's the safer option, which is why you go with it, because there's not as many, there's not as clear of a path to something going wrong.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because I would even go so far as to say, if I was going to put money on who's going to be the rookie of the year, it wouldn't take very good odds, or it wouldn't take a much of an increase for me to move off of Trevor Lawrence and say, either Wilson or, Fields is more likely. He's going to land in a better situation. He's going to have better weapons at the jump.
It's Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Not comparing the players, but the situation. Right. It's Justin Herbert who goes fourth, but lands in an offense with, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, and that has pieces already.
Yeah. But that's kind of my feeling. If Justin Fields lands in a situation where he's going to start from day one, or at least, early on, get on the field. If Justin Fields is in that type of situation, I think that, for me, he's the odds-on favorite to win Rookie of the Year. Now, does that change the math when it comes to Trevor Lawrence? It shouldn't. Like you said, Hopper, he's still the safer option. He's still got the highest floor, and that part's probably not really close. But I think that not only does Justin Fields and Zach Wilson honestly have every bit the ceiling of Trevor Lawrence, they're actually more likely to realize it in year one.
Yeah, and I can even say, you can even speak the same of even a guy like Trey Lance, who could get there. What we I think all agree on is that McCorkle doesn't have any of the
not quite the same upside.
And I think his floor
McCorkle.
It's a great.
What's the upside?
How's he gonna succeed with a name like McCorkle?
I do want to talk about McCorkle for a second. Some of the flaws there, because I didn't really talk about his profile, just so much what I thought, his draft capital was going to be, basically. And for Mac Jones, I think your issue there is, one, Sarkisian did such a good job of scheming for him to use his weapons and to move him off the spot and to get him away from pass rush, that he's going to have to land in an NFL scheme and with an NFL coaching staff that can kind of do that same thing and scheme to his strengths. And I hate giving Sarkisian credit, but he deserves a lot of credit for the season that Mac Jones had, and it showed up on film the way that, it was schemed for Mac Jones, and you hide his flaws, which is that he gets antsy under pressure, had a little bit of luck as he was throwing into coverage, and just didn't necessarily have to think a whole lot because he's got some of the best playmakers out there, and putting the ball in their hands and letting them work. The things to like about Mac Jones, he's got a good release. He is quick through his reads. He doesn't take a lot of sacks. Throws are accurate. Plays with confidence in poise and control of his pocket. Under pressure, that breaks down a little bit, but we're not talking like Josh Rosen levels of breakdown that made him a bust, or that made me look at Josh Rosen and say, no, not a chance, because under pressure it all goes away. That's just kind of the biggest question mark with Mac Jones, and then the fact that the ceiling just isn't as high is a Wilson or a Fields or a Lawrence, because the athleticism isn't the same. It's just not there. The rushing upside isn't there. We joke around the show and say that, Dan just took McCorkle in a mock draft to the Vikings, and you drafted Kirk Cousins to replace Kirk Cousins, and that's in a lot of ways what it feels like.
It felt dirty, but
and Kirk Cousins for fantasy has had some very, very good years in Superflex. He's definitely been reliable as a QB2 that week to week has QB1 upside. So you're okay with Kirk Cousins, especially in that type of scenario. It's just not as exciting as some of these other guys.
Yeah, like he doesn't have the Konami code upside, and that, like, I think people, as we've seen the rushing upside for quarterbacks really take through, especially this year, where forgot who it was. I want to say it was Mike Me Up on Twitter. I think he stated that 7 of the top 12 quarterbacks had 20% of their production was made through rushing. So, like we're starting to see the true effect of what rushing quarterbacks have in terms of top 12 finishes. And while Kirk Cousins isn't sexy, he's one of the perfect QB2s because he's never priced right. Like, he's always undervalued. He's becoming a new Matthew Stafford. In a sense, for as long as he's a QB of Minnesota who has top weapons about, and the defense continues to be shitty, but we know who Kirk Cousins is, and I think and we talked about here. That's what I always think Mac Jones' ceiling is Kirk Cousins. So let's get off these top 5. Let's move on to some of the names that we've talked about. We've mentioned Trask, we mentioned Newman, we mentioned Mon. So let's kind of give, if anybody has any quarterbacks that they have interest in, and this is going to be for fantasy purposes. Is there any quarterbacks, if you guys want to speak your love for Trask, because Hopper knows I am firmly on the other side of Kyle Trask. So we have two Trask likers. Some will say lovers, likers. It's hard to.
Yeah, there's one guy I love more than Kyle.
And we'll talk about
Kyle Trask.
So let's start with Trask. Trask was often talked about as potentially the 6th quarterback in the first round. Right there.
Yes.
Speaks about it before, the bowl games. Obviously, his last game against Bama was pretty ugly. And then as it kind of went downhill for him, and I think some of the flaws stuck out more watching, good film compared to bad film. I feel similarly about Kyle Trask as Hopper feels about as he felt about Josh Rosen. When I watch the pocket collapse, where I think the presence is fine at times, everything goes out the window when it turns into hellfire for him.
Yeah, the difference is that he had presence versus Rosen, who had no presence either. So
I think at times he'll be fine, but it's what I saw as a quarterback who doesn't have NFL arm strength, and at least from what I've seen, he's got decent touch, and he's got decent accuracy throughout the short and intermediate of the field when he has a pocket to work with, and maybe that's due to the scheme. When your 2 best players is Kyle Pitts and Tooney, like it's not fit perfectly for him, to work deep, and maybe that's Florida's problem. But from what I saw with Trask, that when his offensive line struggled, and that I saw that a lot, everything sucked, from ball placement to arm strength, the accuracy, and I'm not a film guru by any point, but it downright looked ugly to me. Combine that with the fact that he's not going to go day 1. There's a chance he may not even go day 2. The chances of him actually producing at least even one top 12 season is fucking gross. And
You know what the
doesn't have
difference?
rushing upside.
You know
I
what the
think that's where the problem is.
you know what the difference is between Mac Jones and Kyle Trask?
is Jones is going to get first round draft capital?
It's draft capital. That's it. That's the only difference to
that's
me
it. That really
between
is it.
between Mac Jones and Kyle Trask, and
That's fair.
it's gonna
I've come to
depend.
terms with that.
Yeah, and it's gonna depend on where Trask lands. I thought so. Dan, to your comment about arm strength, I thought he did show good zip, but he changed speeds a lot. Is something I noticed in his tape is that he
I saw that
would
too.
change speeds based on the situation. If he had to fit it in a tight window, he has a fastball. He doesn't throw the fastball all the time, which is why you see some of the better touch throws and everything on that. So he'll zip it in the intermediate range if he has to fit it in there. And man, did he do some throwing into tight windows, and sometimes it was completely boneheaded. But other times it worked out. It looked out for him because he can do that. Ball placement wise, I thought he was pretty good with that. He put his ball high, gave his receivers a chance on most throws. He wasn't putting the ball in danger a whole heck of a lot. I thought he also threw with anticipation, especially against zone coverage. It does help that you have Kyle Pitts, but the timer was there. But like you said, Dan, when pressure happened, it does kind of go out the window, but he does have the timer, which is what Josh Rosen was severely lacking.
That's true. And I will give you that for sure.
And he's not athletic, but like Mac Jones, he's a willing runner to where he ain't going to chunk you 15 yards, but if pressure's there, he'll pick up 2 or 3 or can scramble for 4 or 5 and kind of those things we laugh at when we see not really a running quarterback run that can pick up positive yards and has a sense to pick up positive yards, but it's not pretty. That's kind of Kyle Trask to me. I think Kyle Trask is Mac Jones without the draft capital. That's basically my summation on it. It's Kyle Trask is Mac Jones that didn't play at Bama that doesn't have the draft capital.
With me, and part of the reason I love Trask is because look at the talent he had last year.
It's bad.
Pitts went out halfway through that season. He didn't play almost half the season. He was injured, if I remember correctly. Sorry, the alcohol is affecting my brain.
There it is.
But the Bama game was actually very good for him. That was
it Bama? I couldn't remember.
Yeah,
which
it was
one
the Oklahoma.
bad.
It was the Oklahoma game.
That's what it was.
The Oklahoma game was bad. The Bama game, McCorkle and Trask, McCorkle and Trask put on a great show.
He and Matt.
Oklahoma was the bad one.
But so I know where you're coming from, Dan. I'm with Hopper. I like the touch throws from Trask. He's really good at that. He knows how to put the ball on his receiver. But with Trask, the guy had 43 touchdowns last year. That's the most in the FBS. He made the most out of his non-elite talent. Like we're all in agreement. McCorkle had much better talent than him.
I don't think Grimes is gonna be. It's gonna scare defenders the way that Devonta Smith did while was stretching the field. So
right,
exactly.
There's no argument for me there.
I want to point out that Kyle Trask made a lot out of nothing, and I think it's important to note that he didn't really get a shot. Something I found interesting. He from when he started last year or 2 years ago. Sorry. When he took over for Felipe Franks after he tore his ACL, he hadn't started a game in a football game since high school. So for him to come in right away like that and produce the way he did, I thought was really good. And it showed that he has the competitive edge, that if he lands somewhere where a team's going to give him a starting job, and I think that team is Chicago in the second round, I think that's going to be a really good place for him. Obviously, Chicago is a highly, highly dysfunctional team.
You got to draft Andy. You got to draft Andy Dalton to replace Andy Dalton, and that's not a shot at Trask. Andy Dalton had some good fantasy seasons, but
Mac Jones is Andy Dalton incarnated. Don't get me started on that. I'm firm, and I am solid on that ideal there. So. Do I think Mac Jones is extremely similar to Kyle Trask? I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think Kyle Trask has better arm strength than Mac Jones. I think he has better placement than Mac Jones. And I don't think either of them are particularly mobile. I think
They're
both
not.
poor man. I think they're both poor man Brady's. They may not be as accurate as Brady is.
Poor
And
man
they're
Brady's
not-
is
hold
like
on.
a 5'1" 40.
Very poor man Brady's.
They're not.
So
They're not.
So
They're not
degrees, right?
that
Okay.
bad. Jones ran a 4.88. Trask ran a.
I thought he ran a 4.68.
I'm looking at player profiler adjusted times. 4.88 for Mac Jones, and it was a 5.13 for Trask.
I was about to
But
say, 'cause I saw 4.68.
The burst scores are really what's important for the quarterback. Burst score correlates more than 40 time. And 111 for Trask and 114 for Jones, which are both above board for a quarterback success level. Because that's going to matter more when you're trying to move around the pocket, pick up yardage in short range, and run away from defenders. And they're both there. By comparison, who's an athletic guy that I have a number on? Because athletic guys really. So Ian Book is probably no.
Ian Book runs.
I got a Felipe Franks number actually, which is probably
That's an interesting one.
So Felipe Franks was at 115.4 on his burst. Ian Book at 114.4, which is right there with where Mac Jones was. So Mac is a little bit more athletic, but Trask still ranks above board.
Right, and what I found interesting was that even though they're both they both have above average, above board burst scores, they don't run that much. So I think it's going to come down to which one of them is better in the pocket, and I really do think Trask, for the level of talent that he had, maneuvered better around the pocket than Mac Jones did.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I think I'm a little biased, which is why I'm finding ways to defend Trask over
That's
McCorkle.
fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
And I just don't know. There's something about Mac Jones that just turns me off, and I feel like it's the one hit wonder thing. The fact that he's only started one season and 3 games last year or 2 years.
There's nothing wrong with one hit wonders. I still rock Aqua's Barbie Girl every now and again.
But there is something wrong with them when they turn into Mitch Trubisky.
He didn't have a hit. Well, I mean, 13 games at North Carolina, but
that's what Mac Jones had. He had 13 games at Alabama of star-studded production, which was obvious.
He started more than 13 because of the Tua injury, though. He's got a little more under his belt. A little more under his belt.
Oh, they're all.
But it's still with the extremely elite talent. So what happens if Mac Jones goes to, let's say Mac Jones goes to Chicago? I no longer think he's going to San Francisco. By the way, enough has come out today. I'm sure you guys all saw it today. All the betting.
First off,
It shifted to Fields.
So first off, I'm chugging bourbon, and then second off, what happens if he goes to Chicago? I mean, the line isn't there. The coaching staff isn't really going to be there.
But he gets a year to sit behind Andy Dalton.
And he still has Allen Robinson. And then,
but
then the problem is you have a coaching staff change and a GM change. So what happens with the regime change? We've seen what happens with the regime changes, and it doesn't go well.
I'm firmly in the camp that Mac Jones is destined to be a career backup, so it would not shock me. If he doesn't go to San Francisco, where does he go? You guys are all certain that he goes in the first round. I think at this point we kind of have to.
A team will trade out for him. Like
if he doesn't go to
what about New England? What about New England? Does he go to? Could he go to New England? Could Bill see him as literally his next great quarterback?
Sure.
I mean,
or Lance, maybe Fields if he's not the one at 3.
Fields is. I just.
He's going. I actually got money on Fields.
Yeah, if it's not Mac, I just think it's Fields.
I got Fields going. I got money on Fields going too. But let's John, you've been I put money on it because it was insane. It was like plus 1,200. Like I couldn't.
John's be quiet. Let's hear what
John. Let's hear from you, buddy. Let's you got a quarterback outside of the top 5 that you have some interest in.
Not a lot. I mean, at the end of the day, again, it really kind of comes down to draft capital. I mean, there's going to be some teams here. Like, here's the thing. Like, either Atlanta or Denver takes a quarterback in the first round. The other one is probably looking in like the second or third round. Those are both great landing spots, with vulnerable quarterbacks. Atlanta because Matt Ryan's 36, Denver because Drew Lock is fucking terrible. So one of those two jobs is going to be available to a quarterback. So, you really just kind of look at all these guys, put them in the same basic tier, at least to me. Like Jamie Newman is probably my favorite out of the group. You guys mentioned Ian Book. I really like his skill set personally. And very pro ready, but it really just kind of comes down to the landing spots. Because there's some very good opportunities for somebody like whoever lands in Philadelphia, for instance, it's going to be a fairly short leash for Jalen Hurts probably. So,
let's not start with that.
We're pro.
Please don't.
I love Jalen Hurts.
Don't put that evil on me. Yes, we are very pro Jalen Hurts.
Am I wrong to get a lot of Jalen Hurts out of Trey Lance and just the path he could take, should take?
No.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Jalen's like 3 inches shorter. He doesn't really. I mean, he's more of a runner than Trey Lance will ever be.
I don't have concern for him this year, but if he does struggle, and if there is a GM change in Philly, I mean, the quarterback class next year.
There won't be. I'll save it for
you. Is he that safe? Is he that safe?
He's like best friends with Lori. He's like best friends with Lori.
God, I'm sorry, man.
It's
I'm sorry.
It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
It's so gross.
Weirdly enough, I would be completely okay with I'm so sorry, John, to interrupt you, by the way. But
no, you're good.
Keeping Howie is okay as long as you get someone that can help him draft, because that's what he sucks at, is drafting. But the cap stuff, the trading, all the financials.
He did move Wentz, which was big. He did move away from Wentz.
He's fleeced so many people over the years. We have the most draft picks this year. We'll have the most value of draft capital next year because we'll have 3 first-rounders most likely. So, Howie does well in that scenario. It's just the drafting part that he has so many issues in. So
what are the chances that Philly goes quarterback at 6? Or not, or at 12? Do you think there's a chance now?
I actually said this on my podcast a couple of days ago, and it's so unlikely. They tried to move up for Wilson. They tried to move up to
that was the rumor,
with Miami at their original pick at 3. They moved up with the intent on selecting Wilson, but evidently they were told to basically fuck off. So, well, that's what was said, because they said if Wilson was there, they would have gotten a deal done. But New York, Joe Douglas is obviously our former, one of our former draft guys. So maybe he called Howie and said, I'm taking Wilson at 2. It's a done deal. It's set in stone. You can't have him. So Howie had a deal in place with the Dolphins to move down, but they just needed a third team to make the 3 to 6 to 12 work, and that team ended up being San Francisco, because it happened really quick after the first trade.
It was the same day. It was like It was like 2 hours.
It was the same hour. It was the
same hour.
Yeah. So
all right. Anything else on their quarterbacks?
John, do you have anything else on Mac Jones, since you got interrupted twice to sidebar to the Eagles?
No, you're good. That was really kind of it, to be honest. I still think that's a decent landing spot for a quarterback, just because, as much as I love Jalen Hurts, I think he's a better passer than people realize.
I agree.
By the way,
I'm there with you.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree with that.
Just the way the wind is blowing out of Philadelphia feels like it's going to be a pretty short leash. So, that's just kind of one example of many where there's a very good landing spot for somebody. You just kind of keep an eye on the ones like that.
All right.
Yeah,
so
I did want to say, if Fields slides to 12, it wouldn't shock me at all to see Philly take him.
Man, you guys would go fucking nuts. Man, it sucked for me. I love Hurts.
I'd be low key. I'd be low key, like about to like take a knife, but because I can't deal with another QB controversy. But at the same time, I was shaken out of my, go away from QB at any cost to give Jalen the team. And I figured that if one of those guys falls, then I'm okay with it.
Sure. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to let's do a little bit of a beer talk. You guys all have brought beers on. Let's
No, I want to talk about Kellen Mond before I talk about beer.
Okay,
I have not gotten to talk about Kellen Mond
I'm
yet.
sorry.
We
I'm
are going to
sorry.
talk about Kellen Mond
We're gonna
because we
talk
just
about
spent the
Kellen
last
Mond.
20 minutes talking about the fucking Eagles. So, Kellen Mond, who I think is, from what I've seen, I mean, I'm excited about Kellen Mond, and I'm probably more excited about Kellen Mond than I am anybody else that fell out of the top 5, just because I do see a lot of upside there. And, never mind what came out of his pro day with putting his own pro day together, building his own workouts, his own routes, taking initiative, and apparently really making a good impression on NFL teams in doing so. Thought he had a great release, pristine accuracy when he could set his feet. When he couldn't set his feet or had to throw on the run, it wasn't necessarily pretty. He had some zip, put the ball in really tight windows, and if you watch the Alabama game with him, he really shows that one off. I've got the hiccups. So he really shows off in that Alabama game the ability to where he can fit the ball. Thought he had a good sense for pressure. The offensive line only allowed 4 sacks there last year, is a stat I heard in one of the games I was watching. And a lot of that is because of Kellen Mond. It's not because of the line. It's because of Mond's ability to sense pressure and either get out and run or get rid of the damn football. He has the athleticism to scramble, had good rushing production, not a run-first quarterback, keeps his eyes downfield. Again, something we mentioned earlier, I really like quarterbacks that can run that look to throw first. He is definitely of that breed. Damn, I have the hiccups.
Hey, you do.
And I thought the stats this year would have been better, except he had the same problem with the receivers where everything was getting dropped. He had a young receiver core, people opting out, people being hurt. There were a ton of drops, ton of balls that maybe weren't perfectly thrown, hitting people in the hands, and then hitting the ground. Only knocks on Mond that I really saw are that the accuracy does disappear on the run. He doesn't quite have the same arm strength as a Zach Wilson or a Justin Fields. But I would say that when you get into the Trask and Jones area, he's definitely on par with those guys. Some questionable gunslinger type decisions when he's under pressure, but it's not egregious and it's typically not dangerous. And it's usually in the name of not taking sacks. And not a game breaker, but definitely some very solid rushing numbers. So Mond's a guy that I see. I'm real curious if he is a top 50 pick, which is rumored that he could be after what he showed teams at his pro day from the IQ perspective and the leadership and take charge perspective. If he's a top 50 pick, I am all in on Kellen Mond jumping into that, kind of up with those first 5 as guys that I'm for sure, especially in Superflex leagues, like all on board with, because he does have the rushing upside, he does have the accuracy, he does have the arm strength. He looked every bit of a pro quarterback when I watched him.
I think if there's a 6 quarterback that goes round 1, it's going to be Kellen Mond. I think just speaking on on your points, Hopper, I think you're going to find teams that are going to fall in love, from a mental standpoint, from a leadership standpoint that he showed. Obviously, you would like to see more from a production, but he's got rushing upside, and that's really the only thing that I'm looking for outside of draft capital is can these quarterbacks provide me a rushing floor when they get an opportunity. So if he lands in a spot that has a chance for him to see year 1 starting opportunity, as John listed off some of the teams that he could be. Like Kellen Mond is someone that you can easily get in the mid to late second in Superflex drafts. I don't know if Trask is going before him or not. I think the couple that I've done in Moxie is. So Mond is going to be at value, especially if he does go top 50, if he does land into an offense that has a questionable quarterback room. Does anybody else have anything else before we move on? I think we've beat these quarterbacks to a dead fucking horse.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I have one other thing. The best part about Jamie Newman's tape was the fact that Pat McAfee called one of the games. That's all I got.
All right. Let's go on to this beer review. Let's let our guest I guess, give their chops on doing reviews.
Should we like set a template here, or
No, I mean, I thought you would just play the drop and then they go into.
you just want them to go first? Or?
Let's have them go first, because I know what it's like to go last and everyone steal your thunder. So
Except we're not all reviewing the same beer, so that doesn't happen.
fine, we'll go first.
So I'm just saving you guys from that, because you put people on the spot to do a beer review without hearing somebody else do one first and kind of getting that blueprint there.
That's
It's a little weird.
That's true.
Try not
I
to
mean,
make
maybe they're
it.
ready.
Try not to make it any more weird for them than it already is when we're like openly discussing this on a live stream while we're recording on which way we should do this. So production meetings and stuff.
Production meeting, Beerfield staple.
Beer review.
This is why I love Kris so much. Why don't you kick us off, buddy?
Why don't I show them how it's done? All right.
Why don't you show us how it's done?
That's fine, because then I can go grab a new beer while you do yours.
All right.
So this is called If You're Not Into Yoga. It's from Illuminated Brewworks. White stout, coconut and pineapple in it. Checking in at 13%. Does not drink like 13%. I got the drunk hiccups, even though I'm not buzzed at all for some reason, while I was talking about Kellen Mond, which made that whole thing accurate. This beer has all of the upside of Kellen Mond, though. It is absolutely delicious. At 13%, it does not drink like 13%. It's got some big pineapple flavor without really being tart. And it's not like that hoppy pineapple flavor you pick up out of IPAs. It's definitely adjunct pineapple, but it's not super tart or super sweet. It's just a real nice, pleasant pineapple flavor. The coconut's there a little bit. I will say it's a little bit weird for a white stout. This is going to be another style rant, Dan. So,
Okay.
part of a white stout, all it really is it's an ale that you get stout flavors out of, like your normal roastiness and things like that, which is usually done through adjunct adds of like coffee or light amount of roasted grain or chocolate. So to have a white stout that is done with sweet adjuncts, to me, is really just I'm guessing it's a white stout because of the alcohol percentage is why they called it that, because the traditional style of white stout, which is not a BJCP recognized style, by the way, but what you typically expect, like with JP Casper's, which is kind of the measuring stick for this, is you'd expect some roastiness along with it. And this is really like an imperial ale with pineapple and coconut. So take a little bit of issue, kind of like I did with 4204's Turtle, and like we have with a couple beers in the past, about the way that this is named from a style perspective, because I don't think it fits what a white stout is. But as far as the beer goes and what I'm actually drinking, and throwing the style guidelines out the window, because style guidelines be damned, it's a really good beer that doesn't drink as high in alcohol content as it is. That's very tropical, very drinkable, and could be super fucking dangerous if I wanted to drink the other four of them tonight.
I think you should.
I think I'm going to go get some Scrimshaw.
All right, so why don't you go get a very delicious Pilsner? Again, for those that may have joined in late, I am drinking Jackie O's Sunless Sea. This is a 13.1% double stout. Hold on, let me get up the notes here. Is brewed with lactose and brown sugar, aged in American whiskey casks. And then the beer is conditioned on vanilla beans, almonds, cardamom, cinnamon, and coriander. This is kind of it's not a true adjunct bomb. The beer itself doesn't have anything added to it. The beer is actually finished on these, on these beans or on these the salt or on the different nuts that they've used here. So the flavors are a bit muted to it. Nose wise, we get chocolate. You get a little bit of char to it. Obviously, American whiskey, so it's not shocking that it is. And then you get a little bit of the heat from the alcohol to it. Mouth wise, you get a lot of roasted chocolate. You do get you do get the vanilla. You do get the cinnamon, kind of just balances it through. it's very roasty. Like with it being a double stout, you got double the ingredients. That makes a lot of sense that you're going to get pretty heavy of the dark chocolate notes that come through this. But the cinnamon really does a good complement job, and I think that's more so due to it being aged on cinnamon instead of just having cinnamon added to it. So, Operator, you got a question for you. When it comes to adding in adjuncts instead of aging it, or instead of adding it but aging the beer on these adjuncts, what are the true differences? You have an idea of what the differences should be? I'm guessing it's because a lot of the flavor profiles are going to be kind of muted through it and not be so dominant as it not being added to the actual brew.
So, yeah, well, it really depends, right? Because when you talk adjuncts, you can add them in the boil, you can add them in secondary fermentation.
Okay.
You can add them in bottling. I mean, there's no real rule on when you have to add adjuncts, but the difference is when you age a beer on these adjuncts versus when you add them in directly, you're essentially right. You're going to mute the flavors, and it's going to have a chance to kind of marry and blend a little better versus being infused, if you will. So, and also just with time, the sharpness of some of those adjuncts wears off. If you've ever had a fruited beer and then you've revisited it in 3 or 4 weeks, you're going to notice that the fruit notes are more muted, and it's kind of the same thing, but it really gives it a chance to marry together kind of into the backdrop of the beer versus being more of a type of flavor type infusion where it's a little bit more prominent.
And this age it's aged for 19 months. So
yeah. What was it aged on again? Sorry, I was upstairs.
It doesn't say what barrels it used, but
okay.
It's aged in American whiskey casks, and it's aged, or I guess it's conditioned on, as it says in the bottle.
Yeah.
Vanilla beans, almonds, cardamom, cinnamon, and coriander.
So condition means that while they were letting it kind of rest and ferment before being bottled and everything, that it was sitting on those, which is more the infusion style. When you age it like with a barrel, it's a marriage.
Okay. All right, who wants to go?
Sam was up there smiling. I think I should call on him.
All right, Sam, you're up to bat, buddy. Don't feel too much pressure after ours.
After those
none
reviews,
at all.
No pressure.
No pressure, buddy.
I've added a third beer to the beer I'm drinking. I got these 3 because I felt like I should have like a nice trio of things to choose from, because I've never drank any of these before, and I wasn't sure I would like any of them.
What's the third one?
The third one is called Screaming Reels. It's another IPA. It's brewed right here near me in Delray Beach, Florida.
Nice.
So actually, literally like 10 minutes away from me. It's a nice India Pale Ale, but I'll start with the one I've enjoyed the most, which is the Golden Monkey. The nose is loaded with a Belgian yeast character, a banana and clove with an equally fruity body balanced with a light earthy hop character, savor, notes of orange and spice, followed by a dry finish.
So if you're listening on the podcast, you think you just gave that review. If you're listening on YouTube, you saw him reading it off the can.
Hey, he did none of that. He totally picked it.
Unless you're on the... Oh, wait. No, I just gave your secrets out on the podcast. You're listening to the podcast, and none of that happened.
Hey,
Goddamn connoisseur.
I already forgot what it said, so I can't even help you out with the styling there.
It's very good. It's very good. It is a little fruity. You can tell that it's a little fruity, but I think it's very good for and it doesn't really 10%, 9.5% is a lot for me. Like I said, I'm used to drinking Yingling. That's like 4.5.
4.5, 5, yeah.
So yeah, so it's not a ton for me, and I can usually hold my liquor, so I'm not that heavily buzzed. I've drank 3 of them this show so far.
You're doing better than Shane.
Yeah. So
Shane also turned to bourbon, I think.
Yeah, he started chugging slow and low.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
so
that's right.
Shane was the one who gave me the idea to ask Dan to come on this show originally, and Shane told me this show completely turned him off alcohol for the time being. So he's sticking to water.
Oh no.
Shane Barrett, go back a couple episodes. That was a fun one with him and Roto Lounge.
Shane, sorry.
Shane's my co-host on a YouTube series we do. So we've had a couple of good laughs about my preparation for this. He told me to bring a lot of water. I have a nice full Chick-fil-A cup of water right here that I have been,
I think rumor has it
continually
Shane is still
sipping.
hungover from that episode.
I felt bad for Shane when he told me how fucked up he got on this show. So
It was entertaining. It was. We got to watch the train wreck happen.
Sorry, just have to get that copyright claim in once a month.
Anyways, this golden monkey is very good. I'm not really sure what else to say. The peanut butter chocolate milk stout I had was also good. Like I said, it was coffee, cocoa, roasted peanuts, toffee, raisins. A very good mix of things. Again, the combination of these has been very nice. It's not making me feel like I've had 4 10% beers. So
Belgian yeast, coriander, and orange peel, by the way, are pretty standard in Belgian beers. It's close to a Blue Moon, basically.
I'm a big Blue. I like Blue Moon, so
yeah.
I'm pretty used to that kind of thing. But I like it overall. It's been very good. I'd highly recommend it, and this will probably be one of my next go-to beers that I kind of get addicted to. So, this is a nice one. I highly recommend the Golden Monkey.
All right, John.
All right, John.
All right. Well, I had to move on from the Insane Rush IPA that I started the night with. It's a little. It's very hoppy, which is that's okay. It also is very dry. Which I don't love.
Don't do dry.
I have to expect that from a gluten-free beer, though, right?
Yeah. I kind of think so. The alternative, though, I moved on to Holiday Brewing Company's Favorite Blonde, which is, we've been shitting on Mac Jones a lot tonight. This is kind of the Mac Jones.
McCorkle.
McCorkle.
This is the McCorkle of beers.
McCorkle.
Is that what you're about to say?
McCorkle Blonde. 5% alcohol.
That's definitely McCorkle.
Like it's on a base of millet and buckwheat. There's like a hint of citrus to it, but this is just like a table beer. There's like nothing offensive about it. It's very light, it's just kind of there. It's just like that, and that's kind of what Mac Jones is going to be. He's there. We need a quarterback. Hey, there's one just kind of sitting there. So yeah, that's essentially what I've got going here with the Holiday Favorite Blonde. It's very light, very easy to drink. A little bit of a smoky aftertaste, but honestly, there's just not a whole lot to it.
So it is the Mac Jones of beers.
Yep. It is. It's the Mac Jones Kyle Trask of beers.
Davis Webb, by the way, was the first quarterback we used boring on. We called him the vanilla ice cream of quarterbacks.
God,
yeah.
Fuck Davis Webb.
That was all the way back in 2017.
When I was even worse at this. All right.
Deshaun Kaiser was your quarterback one, but we're not going to talk about that.
We're not going to talk about my inability to scout quarterbacks because let's be real, I'm still pretty bad at it. Let's move on to running backs. We've been at this for a while here, so let's get through this. So 21 class deemed pretty weak amongst most people. Obviously, there's some out there that like it, but it gets a lot of comparisons.
I feel like let's get through this was a great way to kick off this segment because that's what it's going to feel like here as we get into those mid tiers. So let's get through this.
My first question, I'm just going to ask you guys how bad is this class in your guys' mind? Just how bad?
It's more unsure, right? To me. Because when I look at this class, you've got 3 guys that I look at and say, yeah, I can reasonably assume these are going to produce. And then there's another 1, 2, 3, 4 guys that there's a little more risk associated to, but you're not going to be surprised if they do. And then you get beyond that, and
then Jamar Jefferson.
Yeah, Jamar Jefferson last always. But you get beyond, you get beyond those next four guys, and then there's just this tier of people that are, small or old but hyper athletic or old but produced, and you're not really going to sort them out until after the NFL draft, in my opinion, because my running backs 8 through 15 all have some path where I look at them and say, yes, they could be productive for at least 1 year. They could at least, at minimum, give you a James Robinson year where you immediately try to trade them afterwards, which is what you should be doing with James Robinson, by the way. Where where they can have potentially that type of upside. So to me, bad is subjective because you never really know if a class is bad. But this class definitely lacks a lot of the surefire. I can't say that there's going to be. I can't say it's going to be worse than the 2019 class, right? Which is pretty bad.
It's pretty bad.
We could look back and say this is better than 2019. We could look back and say, okay, yeah, we did get 7 or 8 guys here that, were productive for at least one season, and I wouldn't be surprised, but good luck telling me which 7 or 8 that's going to be right now, because I can name 3 of them probably for sure, and the other 5 is going to be a damn crapshoot.
I'd be shocked if we get more than 5. Sam, John, what are you guys' thoughts on this class as a whole?
Ooh. I'm high on the top 3, obviously, but after that it starts to peter off. I got 6 in my list that can be starters right away. Sure. That list will end with Gainwell, Carter, and Sermon. Sermon's a nice, interesting one for me. Not really many people are talking about him.
Sermon's right at the back end of that tier. I just said it, people that are old or injury prone or have something that's just like, but could be.
He checks all the boxes of what you want in a lead back. He kind of strikes me as that, he's kind of up in that David Johnson type of frame, 6'1", 225, right around there. And he strikes me as a guy who could really come in and be your lead back if he lands in the right place. Thinking like in Atlanta in like the second or third, or not the second or third round, more like the third or fourth round. I really think there's a very strong possibility he could be the 4th guy off the board in this class. I'm sure we're all, going some combination of Javonte, Etienne, and Najee for our top 3.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but it becomes a little murky after that. So you kind of have to pick and choose to find where your fantasy producers are going to be. So I like those 3. Hubbard is right there on the edge for me, but he's so dependent on where he lands. So he's a tier below. But I had those 6 guys as my top guys, and it's really going to depend where they land. I think Javonte Williams is the number 1 back in this class, and that's not a popular opinion from what I've seen.
Nope.
Najee
not
Harris.
on this show.
Najee Harris is number 1 mostly and pretty clearly, and for me, it's an odd reasoning that Javonte is 1. It's purely because of his age.
He's
He's
one of the younger backs.
I'm not.
We'll talk about that in a minute, John.
I'm not an ageist. I promise you, I'm not an ageist.
John, what are your thoughts on this?
Najee is 23.
What are your thoughts on this class?
I think that the big issue, well, there's kind of 2 external forces. First of all, you look at the 2020 class. Comparing this one to that makes
that's unfair. That's unfair.
Yeah.
That's
not fair.
Yeah, you can't do that.
And I think that people do kind of fall into that trap a little bit.
Sure.
Especially, there's a little bit of a trend there. Like 2019 was a down year, but 2018, 2017, both great.
We're good, yeah,
for running backs. So, but the other thing that did is ate up a lot of a lot of opportunities. We're kind of at a little bit of a saturation point.
It did.
A running back right at the moment.
You had a lot of people come out early, and the people that didn't come out early are the people that you're getting in this draft class. And then here in a couple of years, you're going to have that crop of freshmen that came in, where the good ones are going to come out early, and then in a year or two after that, you're going to get the leftovers.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, you look around the NFL at the landing spots, and it makes this class feel worse than it is, because you're just like, what are the opportunities available, and how much do I give a shit about that? Like, Miami and Pittsburgh are great opportunities for running backs.
Atlanta.
Right? So there's two of our guys. Atlanta, even there, like, they're going to kind of they'd have to fight through Gurley, Mike Davis.
Gurley's gone.
No Gurley.
It's just Mike Davis.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
and
right.
Brian Hill.
Brian Hill's cut. Brian Hill's cut.
They cut.
They
cut Ito Smith.
They cut Brian Hill too.
Oh, did they really?
Yes.
I didn't see that. Wow.
Just Quadri Olsen.
Quadri Olsen, and
Wow.
I didn't see it either until
That's
I went
crazy.
and looked at their depth chart, and he wasn't there. And then I looked at the bottom of it, and it said had him listed as a cap casualty.
That is
so
the worst.
it's Quadri Olsen and Mike Davis, and that's it.
That's the worst
Damn,
back
Interesting.
I
in
did
football.
not know that.
Yeah.
So that helps. That helps that one a little
It
bit.
does.
Yeah, that makes
Like, but even some of the kind of the next tier opportunities, like San Francisco and Arizona, it's like, there's
He's a
still
free agent.
still some depth there, that they're going to have to fight through. So yeah, it's like the New York Jets. That should be an open opportunity for whoever, but are we really going to put a whole lot of faith in the running back one in that situation? It just makes it feel like there aren't a whole lot of difference makers coming, because there aren't a whole lot of difference making situations for them to land in.
Well, and hasn't that been the case the last couple of years, though? I mean, we looked at J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor as difference makers. And, well, Taylor eventually was, and Swift flashed. I mean, they still had to fight for positioning and fight for carries, and ultimately didn't get them. And that's what we're going to in the NFL landscape. And that's kind of going to be I know you're not ageist, but that's kind of going to be my rebuttal to the age argument just in general, is that you can make the age argument for long term if running backs are being valued past their first contract, but they're freaking not. So you're going to get Najee Harris in here, who's going to go 4 years, not have his fifth-year option picked up, and then be cast off to God knows where at 27 years old, essentially. And that's
the worry.
And that's not so old that you're not in your prime, but running backs just aren't getting contracts like they used to. So I care less about age with running backs probably than I should, but because I don't assume that any of these guys are going to be valued past their first contract anyway, so I'm not worried about them getting to 30 before the next guy, because I just assume that once their first contract's up, they're pretty much done.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Unless
I tend to
the
agree
same
with
boat.
that. Like,
I'm right in the same boat.
I do know that, age, breakout age, stuff like that. Like they are indicators historically.
Yes, breakout
So,
age is, but
So we kind of use that. But yeah, I like in terms of for running, to me, the running back position is the one that the age doesn't matter nearly as much as the usage.
right. Quarterback's the other one because you can play until you're 40. But
Right.
Yeah.
if you're really good, we'll see how it plays with these not athletic
Tight ends take
guys.
so
But
long to break out.
Yeah.
Running backs, it's tough because you look at a guy like Miles Sanders who played behind, Barkley. Like, it's the reason why it took till
well,
junior year for him to break out.
and wide receivers with age, the problem is how do they play? Because if they're not refined, you end up with Des Bryant, who hits that middle stage of his career where his athleticism leads him, and then he's just done.
Yeah.
So.
And the age of those receivers are also coming up, but that's for.
But anyway, the other thing with running backs, I guess those are my 2 points. Is one, who does land in a situation to be a difference maker now? Because like you mentioned, John, there's 3 spots where they're going to land, and there's true opportunity at potentially being a bell cow. And if they go out and draft, let's say that the Falcons go out and don't draft Williams, Etienne, or Harris,
and they end up with a Gainwell or a Kylan Hill or a Hubbard, you're not looking at that and saying they're the unquestioned starter. You're looking at that and saying, yeah, Mike Davis might have some value this year, and that's kind of the problem.
I more say that backfield's untouchable if they land with one of those second guys.
I feel that way about Arizona too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. If Arizona drafts any of the top 6 guys, you're looking at like an unusable backfield because there's enough draft capital in there to make Edmonds enough of a question in there.
But they're not untouchable for Dynasty because what you're going to bank on later on is if they do take a guy that late, you're just drafting. Running backs, if you're taking them beyond the first round in this draft, you're drafting hoping they hit at some point, and then you can move on from them. And, yeah. So let's get into some of these individual guys, Dan.
All right, so let's do our top 2 tiers.
Okay.
Obviously, this is I still think this is a very shallow class. There's a lot of question marks for me beyond my first 2 tiers. I'll start off real quick here. So my tier 1 is Harris and Etienne. These guys were talked about as top tier guys coming into last year's class. Harris and Etienne were both baked into that top 6, top 7. I had them both higher than CEH. I was actually pretty low on them. And then you go into guys like Javonte Williams and then Gainwell for me. I am a Gainwell truther, full and through. I've been that way since his freshman season at Memphis. I absolutely love Kenny Gainwell. Outside of that point, though, it's a massive question mark. So those are my top 4. Those are my 2 tiers. John, you've had the least amount of talk time on here, buddy. So why don't you get into your top 2 tiers of backs here?
First of all, I'm never hurting for talk time. I'm good. Especially now, I've got the super show all to myself. But yeah, I mean, it's really just kind of 4 guys, I guess, for the top 2 tiers. Because I'm with you. I mean, Harris, Etienne are kind of 1A, 1B for me.
Yep,
all alone in that tier. And then tier 2, it's really just 2 guys. I actually do have Trey Sermon ahead of Javonte Williams.
Wow.
Just kind of an all around, all purpose back. But it kind of ends with those guys. There are a handful of guys. Michael Carter, Kenny Gainwell, guys like that. Chuba Hubbard is still very interesting to me. I don't know. It feels way too early to have bailed as hard as we did on Chuba Hubbard, but I don't think that any of them quite crack the top 2 tiers for me.
I mean, if you're asking for my top 2 tiers, it's Najee Harris, Etienne in tier 1, and Javonte Williams is like tier 2. And then you get to tier 3, which is where I have Michael Carter, Kylan Hill, Kenneth Gainwell, Chuba Hubbard.
Okay.
And I think that's a fair amount of depth because my tier 3 is the giant one that runs like RB 8 through RB 15 for me, which is where it could be anybody. But as far as the guys, and Hubbard's a weird one too because he's kind of out in the middle of those 2 tiers. And Williams is a weird one because he's in the middle kind of between 1 and 2, which is why I have him in his own tier. But, I could easily wrap him up into that top tier if I was going to. I'd wrap Williams into the top tier before I wrapped him into the second tier. So for the sake of discussion and at least talking people, my top tier is going to be Harris, Etienne, Williams. I'll go ahead and put Williams in that upper tier.
Okay.
Second tier, Carter, Hill, Gainwell, Hubbard.
What about you, Sam? What are your top 2, 3 tiers?
I have Javonte Williams as my RB1, I said, and it really comes down to his age because the only place I'm ageist when I'm playing fantasy football is at running back because of the short shelf life of our running backs here. So my tiers go Najee and Javonte, and they're really interchangeable. Sure. I'm okay with either of them as my RB1. If I end up with either of them in Dynasty, I'm or redraft. I'm so okay with either of them. I could not care less at this point. If the only caveat is that if Najee goes to Pittsburgh, whoever goes to Pittsburgh is my RB1 of these two. If either of them go to Pittsburgh, they're my RB1, and it's not particularly close. ETN's in a tier by himself, only because I've heard he's so scheme specific. He may not fit in as many places as the other two might. So I'm going to put him in his own tier, and then I'm going to round out that tier with Gainwell, Carter, and Sermon. Or, really Sermon kind of on top of that tier. Gainwell profiles is more of a complimentary guy. He's more of a pass-catching back. He's very good at pass-catching, and he's a very, Memphis continues to churn out RB after RB after RB after RB after RB. So I have no doubt the game will be good.
Well, RB after RB after RB after RB after all RB, they really function as slot receiver after slot receiver after slot receiver after slot.
I mean, hey,
is that so bad though? I mean,
no, they have a
model.
They have a model, and there's an NFL blueprint for what those guys are going to be, and it works.
I think if Darrell Henderson actually wasn't stuck behind Cam Akers, he'd be a starter somewhere else.
And Darrell Henderson shouldn't be stuck behind Cam Akers, but that's a different discussion for a different episode based on my feelings about Cam Akers.
But he's there. Michael Carter is going to be, very dependent on where he goes. He reminds me a lot of Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Deion Lewis.
See, ETN reminds me a shitload of Edwards-Helaire. I think is where I went with that one.
I mean, at least he's 3 inches. At least he has 3 inches.
Yeah,
similar.
I'm more comparing the similar, the height and weight.
Okay, I was comparing play style, not so much size.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think Carter could honestly come in and be a starter anywhere he goes. He, of the guys outside the top 3, he's got the best chance of becoming a starter, simply because he was able to exist with Javonte Williams and be an RB1 in that scheme along with them. They both rushed for over 1,100 yards, or I think it was 1,100 yards. I'm not.
They're both over 1,000. I'm pretty sure. That's right.
I think Carter is going to be really good. I think people are undervaluing him.
I think the NFL is going to undervalue Carter, and that's where my concern lies in. Like you look at, so I went back and looked at the last 11 years. There's been 3 running backs under 5'8" that have produced a top 24 season. And that's Deion Lewis, which I think is his best comp. Philip Lindsay and Tariq Cohen, which you can't really count Tariq Cohen. Philip Lindsay.
Did we Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that yet?
He's
actually 5'8".
It was
5'7", but
and it was 1,245 yards in 11 games for Michael Carter. So not even a full season.
I like Carter, but my problem is it's going to be draft capital for these backs, and
it's going to be
Carter
draft
not
capital.
Having the best of pro days, and I don't have a lot of love for both. Like I like Javonte. I have my concern with him if he can actually handle a full bell call workload. His highest touch is 183 touches. Like we can look at his size and say
something Josh Jacobs. Right,
I mean
we've seen that though, but we've seen that before, and the draft capital.
Jacobs barely held up to a full.
Jacobs didn't hold up to a full season.
Yeah, he hasn't played a full season yet either.
Right.
Now we're talking about him as being.
That's why I threw Josh.
I want to talk about the draft capital thing. Draft capital matters so little for running backs. We've seen everything from first round picks to undrafted free agents maintain bell cow roles.
There's a relatively strong correlation to 4th round or higher, though. You do have the undrafted free agent that puts up a good season or does occasionally grab a role, but your high percentage is 4th round or higher. I mean, it's good because you can have a day 3 pick, and they're not any less likely to succeed than a 2nd rounder. But
we have the Chris Carsons, we have the James Robinsons.
So
those
to that point is
so you have 2.
Chris Carson got replaced in 2018 by Rashad Penny.
Yeah, he didn't get replaced
for 2 years. He did though. He got he would have been replaced had Penny not gotten hurt. Like it's or
so it's a matter of circumstance.
Well, you look at Philip Lindsay,
seasons, and then got replaced.
And you look at Philip Lindsay, who's now was a free agent and then gets cast off to go sign not even 2 years after losing your shit about Philip Lindsay. And James Robinson, I think, is going to meet the Philip Lindsay fate. And Chris Carson's a rarity. I don't believe that he would have
really
gotten.
think James Robinson's going to meet the Phil Lindsay?
Yes, I do.
Situation?
I 100% do.
For me, he'll never meet the expectations where people want to set him at. Like, we've seen an undrafted free agent where you got him in the 4th round at best in your rookie drafts, and you're holding on for what? Like, there's been rumors of Jacksonville going running back, and like, even if they don't, you have next year, you have 2023. Like, he'll never.
But if he does that again, we can toss that. If he does that again, we can toss that out the window. Right?
We have Philip Lindsay then.
No, that you got Philip Lindsay then.
Lindsay, and now you're going with a running back with multiple 1,000-yard seasons.
You got to get in Chris Carson territory before you can throw it out the window and say, or I guess Eckler Eckler was a UDFA, wasn't he?
The NFL has increasingly shown that they want to move away from the workout horseback.
But you're also expecting Jacksonville to make the right decision.
Right.
The right decision is to let James Robinson be your lead back and hope that it works.
I thought Carlos Hyde was the perfect person to be in there as a backup.
To get cut in August.
Yeah, he's there because of his connection to Urban Meyer, and he's there because he won't take a large amount of touches away from James Robinson. So,
or because they're going to bring somebody in.
We've veered off a little bit off the rookies here. So we we gave our top guys. Obviously, let's give our late round guys. There's been a lot of talk for the top 3, 4, 5 in this. Like, you can search through Twitter. We can give we gave our talks on on these top backs, what we feel about them. So let's give shout outs to some of the late round ones.
I mean, we just kind of said where we had them ranked. I don't know. I don't feel like we really, not to shit on what you're trying to do, but I don't feel like we really talked about much from a player profile perspective, just that we had them ranked high.
Okay, then let's go back and talk about.
I actually don't feel that strongly about any of the top 3 to want to go back and talk about them, but
okay, that's fine.
I'm just saying
it's a weak class. For
the sake, like, there are. I think, let's put it this way. Let's just sum it up with this: Harris and Etienne are the top. And Williams are the top 3 backs in some order.
And Trey Sermon.
No. And
damn it, Hopper.
And they all have significant holes in their game. There's not a Jonathan Taylor in this class where, oh my God, he's an elite runner. There's not a J.K. Dobbins that you're looking at and is they're a game breaker, or Swift, who's like, man, this guy could be a really complete back. There are 3 guys at the top of this class that all do some things well, that also have some holes in their game. I think that's pretty much the summation of the top 3. For Etienne, it's that he doesn't have game-breaking speed and could be scheme-dependent and was never really elite. For Harris, it's the pass-catching ability and ability in pass protection and the fact that he's coming out at 23. For Williams, it's the agility and the fact that he profiles mostly as a between-the-tackles runner. There you go. Covered. Now we can move on.
I mean, I do notice that you didn't actually say anything negative about Trey Sermon.
Okay, we can do that too.
John.
Besides not mentioning
no. I want to let John get on a soapbox and protect his boo, Trey Sermon. Like, we can't just shit on Trey Sermon. I mean, we can because
it's your show.
But
it's your show.
Let's John.
Go ahead.
I want John to soapbox Trey Sermon for me and Hopper.
No, I mean, I don't have a lot to say about it other than, like I said, I mean, I think that this is the most complete back. I think this is, we didn't get to see a whole lot of pass catching in his college career, but there kind of weren't a whole lot of passes to be caught necessarily. Shared the backfield for a lot of it as well, but. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's just kind of one of those guys that just makes his way onto the field doing one thing, and next thing you know, he's just kind of takes over that role. It's landing spot dependent. That's the case with most of these guys.
Yeah.
And I just think that Trey Sermon is somebody who's going to sneak up on some people. I don't have, a whole lot of in-depth analysis on it or anything.
That's fair. No, that's fair.
That's okay. I do.
I knew
Hopper,
you would.
why don't you give your let's
I'm
Sermon
gonna
together.
do it, and I will preface this by saying I do see a path, especially in this class, to Trey Sermon having a viable season or two. Now, here's what I'm gonna say: the way that so John, Sam, you guys don't know this, our listeners do. So, step one for me when I'm evaluating prospects is that I have a spreadsheet. It's not a true database. I'm an IT guy. If I say database, it better be a relational databases and like SQL and some shit. I have a spreadsheet of the last now 11 years. Well, not the last 11 years. The 11 years preceding 2018 for or 2019 for running backs, because I give them a couple years to really be able to categorize guys. That's broken out basically by, was the player a superstar? Was he a bell cow? Was he a usable piece? Was he just a guy that floated around rosters, et cetera, with all of their college productivity, what their profile was coming out, what their athletic profile was coming out, et cetera, and then sorted that by each category and kind of figured out where the drop-off point was. Where's the point where you see these people drop from, basically James White, Dion Lewis types of usable ancillary pieces to just being a guy that floats around on the roster? And then I went through and set that criteria. And then as I plug people in for each year, I have a mark that they have to hit, and I go through what's called the gating process. And basically it means that you have to hit some intangible metrics, which is basically big school, small school, size, weight, or height, weight, BMI for a running back. You don't have to hit all of them. You have to hit, I think for that, it's like 2 out of 4 or 3 out of 4. And then we go look at their rushing productivity, their efficiency, their high-level efficiency numbers, receiving productivity, et cetera, and you have to hit X amount of categories and something, and this is all based on looking at the last 11 years worth of data, to be considered above board. You have to clear those gates in order for me to get to film on you. Or you have to catch enough hype in the fantasy community to where I feel like I need to watch you because I have to have an opinion. And I don't just base my rankings off of that. That's what determines if I'm going to watch film on you or not. And then I watch film, and then I look at draft capital and what draft capital correlates to what typically means success, which is how I came up with like 4th round or higher for running backs, for example, and throw it all together into some composite form of opinion. Trey Sermon did not clear board. He cleared board on his burst score, his agility score, and his BMI. The 40 time was lower than you want it to be. The speed score was lower than you want it to be. The burst score was lower, or not the burst score. Sorry, the dominator rating was much lower than you want it to be. He's a guy that he's coming out at 22, but he is an old 22. Let's put it that way. In 45 career games, he was below board in his career rush yards. The efficiency was there. Below board in his rush touchdowns, below board in the receiving metrics, as you mentioned, to your credit. And I also look at single season, because there are guys that have big single seasons that go out there and then produce. And he was also below board in a lot of that. And blame Master Teague, blame whatever you will. But statistically, he's a guy that didn't profile for me fantastically. He basically hit on his size metrics and nothing else that would say, hey, I should watch film on him. But I watched film on him because I saw plenty of people talking about Trey Sermon. I watched the college football playoffs, so I saw Trey Sermon. It was enough to be intriguing to make me go watch film on him. And what I saw with Trey Sermon from a film perspective was that he does have some good lateral quickness. He does have a good stiff arm. He does run with attitude. And actually, he looks okay as a pass catcher on film, even though the metrics don't necessarily back that up, which is fine because metrics don't always tell the whole story, as you said. Not a lot of passes to go around, et cetera, et cetera. The biggest thing I didn't like about Trey Sermon is that when I watch
his bigger games, including the one against Clemson, the offensive line is doing a lot of the opening holes and creating those big-ass chunk runs he was pulling off, and he wasn't necessarily doing it. I thought in watching some of his other games, the vision was a little inconsistent, that he was missing holes, he didn't quite have the quickness to get into cutback lanes, and that because he has a longer stride, it kind of hurt some of that agility and some of that ability to create for himself. And on a personal level, I don't like backs that I perceive that are going to struggle to create for themselves. He chunked yards. Now, that doesn't mean he can't be productive in the NFL, because we see, as Sam's mentioned, we see UDFAs be productive in the NFL. And this is why Trey Sermon's still in that could-be tier for me. And he's not down below that in the tier of, nah, these guys didn't hit anything. They're never going to be anything. Trey Sermon's in that could-be tier because the reason you see UDFA hits, the reason you see late-round draft picks hit, is because most of these guys, Rashad Penny, for example, if they have a giant-ass hole open for them, if they have an offensive line that can block and they can hit the hole that they're supposed to hit, they're athletic enough, they're fast enough, they're big enough, they're strong enough to actually make waves with that, to make use out of that, and put together a good season based on that. Trey Sermon has a path to productivity in the NFL, and he has a path to being good in the NFL. He's got to land with the line that can block, though. And, I see some of that, not to the same degree, and the productivity was a lot higher for Javonte Williams. But it's kind of like Javonte Williams light in the sense of where he's going to make a lot of his hay based on what's opened up for him, and especially the fact that once you get Trey Sermon one-on-one, he's absolutely fantastic. Once you get him to the open field, he's fantastic. He runs violent. He has a great stiff arm. He has a long stride that has the ability to break away. He's got to get there. So I need Trey Sermon for me to move him to the tip-top of that. Well, she could get there. To the tip-top of that could-be tier. I just need to land someplace that is going to have opportunity and that's going to be able to block for him. Because I think with a little bit of help, he can be damn good. But he's not somebody I look at like some of these other guys like a Gainwell or a Carter or a Kylan Hill, where I see the agility or the athleticism to be able to do some creating on his own. He does break tackles, but most of them are open field tackles. It's not a lot of shit going down at the line there. So that's my Trey Sermon soapbox. And, don't want to shit all over it because I definitely see where you're coming from. There are things to like there. It's just...
No, it's good stuff, man. Yeah. I mean, some of that stuff you can kind of say about all running backs.
Yes, you can.
Burst tells me a lot more than speed.
It does.
For running backs. Speed, honestly, speed is might be the most overrated metric that we have.
Agility and burst, and again, this is going in Sermon's favor. Agility and burst are by far the two metrics for a running back that correlate more so than anything else to success is agility and burst.
Yep. Yeah.
And if you couple
and the
that
ability
with,
to catch the ball.
That's
the
you need that nowadays more so than ever.
Yeah.
As more offenses are going more of that college friendly where they're moving away from pro style to, all right, we have our quarterback. Let's not have them, anticipate throws or throw players open. Let's spread them out. Let guys make more sense. And that's why I love Gainwell so much, because he fits where the NFL is moving to. And you have a running back who's put on 30 pounds or so since his freshman year. And he was able to eclipse the 200-plus pound mark to where he could eventually hopefully play at a higher play.
And it didn't kill his pro day. But
no, he had a great pro day.
Back to burst and agility and Trey Sermon, though. It's why I believe in a hybrid model. If you're doing analysis, you can't rely solely on the analytics, or you can't rely solely on film. Because I can see a guy be agile and have good burst on film. Demetric Felton and Puka Williams. The thing go out and test, and it doesn't at all back up what you see on film. And then that's a red flag, and you have a reason to have concern. With a guy like Trey Sermon, it's kind of the opposite. You look at the analytics, and you say the burst is there, the agility is there, but the other thing, the third component that I need to see for that to be like, damn, this guy is going to be good, is I need to watch your film and see that you also have the vision to put that to good use. You know, you have the agility to maybe see a hole open up here that isn't where the play is designed to go. But if you don't have the vision to deploy that agility to do it, then it's wasted. And it, you know, Jeremy McNichols, good example of this.
Oh.
Sorry, Dan. So
it hurts.
it's just one of those things where you got to put it all together. And, you know, you can't truly tell what somebody's seeing when you're watching film. It's a best guess. People like analytics because it's firm. It's not based on an opinion. And film is entirely based on opinions. What I see may not be what you see.
Yeah.
But
yeah, because I do see the kind of the same thing as you. I kind of value it differently.
Sure.
I like seeing a running back who makes a quick decision and goes with it.
Yeah. You don't want a banana running.
Shit out of me when they're just dancing in the backfield waiting for a hold open up.
I agree.
There's a balance between the two things, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
sure. But no, that's great analysis, Hopper. I like that a lot.
Thanks.
Calling you Hooper from now on.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Bowler.
Austin's my brother.
This little 5% gluten-free beer.
All right, I switched to a little. I switched to a little 5% Pilsner that won our NCAA bracket of beers. So
you can't front on John's gluten-free beer. It's not his fault.
No.
Goddamn body's fault.
So outside of Trey Sermon, there's a couple guys just to keep this kind of moving and hopefully put a bow on it eventually. You mentioned Gainwell. I like Kylan Hill. We just let John go on Trey Sermon. Dan, why don't you go on Kenneth Gainwell, and then I'll go on Kylan Hill. Sam, you can go on somebody you have, and then I want to touch on some of that third tier, which is going to be a quick hitter of just here's some other names to know. But
that's about it.
Go ahead and give your Gainwell take.
So for Gainwell, it really stems to what his production was in his one and only season at Memphis. Like, yes, there's concern about rawness. He had one full productive season, but what he was able to accomplish in the backfield that he shared with Antonio Gibson was absolutely insane. One of two backs only produced over 2,000 yards from scrimmage. The other one is Jonathan Taylor. He's not Jonathan Taylor. But what he was able to accomplish as a receiving back, as a runner, between the tackles, outside the tackles, the guy can literally do it all. I think he had 56 receptions as a freshman. 51-ish. He only had 7 touches as a true freshman, but as a red shirt, it's where that all came together. He tests over 200 pounds, or he comes in over 200 pounds. He runs the 4.49. He hits all the metrics that you want to see. Size adjusted speed is important. 40 time is not, but where they're at comparative, it's where that metric becomes predictive. And just the landscape and what he's going to fall into is that if he's going to get the draft capital, he's going to go day 2. I think there's a very strong chance he does go second round, where I do believe, though, he's going to end up going round 3. I think he's a guy that if he does land into a competitive backfield, he can find a way, to replace those guys. He goes to Arizona, he's going to replace as a better overall Chase Edmonds. He's shown the ability to handle a full touch workload. He's shown the ability to be used in the passing game, whether that be as a slot receiver or an outside receiver. He's shown the ability to be highly valuable in space. And if he lands in a team like Arizona that can spread him out, all you have to hope for is that Kyler Murray and that offense actually passes to the running back. Well, there's going to be a lot of, mismatches for him because he's going to be a mismatch to most linebackers and safety that he's lined up against. So for Gainwell, you got to hope that the draft capital holds, that the landing spot holds. But in a wide open running back class, yes, I have him in the same tier as Williams, that there is an opportunity for him to be the best overall back from this weak class. Hopper, why don't you go and you can soapbox Kylan, and I will share probably same feelings for him.
Okay, yeah, Kylan Hill is really more of a film guy for me than a statistics guy for me. He did have the productivity.
The pro day was a little
He did.
iffy. There were some things that were
Lackluster.
good. There were some things that were bad. It was a mixed bag there. But Kylan Hill is a lot like for me, like Trey Sermon is for John. And it's that in the right situation, I think he could absolutely just take off. First off, 5'11", 215. He checked in size-wise better than I was anticipating. I actually need to update that. I think 5'11", 214. 5'10", 214. We're right, which actually works out better from a BMI perspective.
Yep. it does.
But he's an explosive runner, had good acceleration, speed, and agility that showed up. The agility is the one thing that didn't show up in the pro day that did show up on film. But the acceleration, speed, and burst was all there. He was a good pass protector. And, you fantasy guys are probably sitting back there saying, well, what the hell do I care if you pass protects well? Here's why you care. Because it gets them on the field. If you can pass protect, they're going to be comfortable putting you on the field on third down. For a guy like Kylan Hill, that's the difference between having weekly flex value versus not seeing the field, is can you pass protect or not. I thought he did good at that. He's an adept pass catcher, which is the NFL moves more spread is a big thing. And in the open field, I thought he set up blocks really well, made guys miss, obviously showed some of that burst, showed the jets, kept his feet moving between the tackles. So he wasn't just an outside guy. He definitely could work a little bit between the tackles. And he sees holes and gets downhill quick. And with a lot of these agility guys, again, going back to something John mentioned, you don't want to see him banana running or doing a whole shitload behind the line and taking plays at a loss. If you're going to be an agility guy, you need to use that agility, but you got to have a quick read still. If you're not going to the hole where the play was designed, you still got to have a quick read and get downhill. You can't just run left or right because you don't gain yards running left or right. He does occasionally miss a chance to cut up field. That's a little bit of a vision issue. It's not a huge one. And it is kind of a what have you done for me lately type scenario because after the second game of the season, he got hurt and he opted out. So you don't have a 2020 profile to go on with Kylan Hill. You're mostly working off of 2019. But overall, he's a guy that I think if he lands in the right spot is going to, and that's what it means for a lot of these guys because they're going to have to land in a spot that executes their skill set well. Like, Hill's a guy I wanted to see land in Arizona because of the more spread out type of pass catching style that I think they're going to run. Hill's a guy that in the right spot I think is really going to take off, and I think that there's a lot there to like about him is if you're, picking through these guys like Trey Sermon, Kenneth Gainwell, et cetera, that you're looking at behind the top three.
I love Kylan Hill. Like if there's a back that I'm willing to take a chance on in the late second round, their late third round in my rookie drafts, if he lands into a favorable spot, it's going to be him. 3 games in 2020, 29 targets. Like, yes, we can't go off of just 3 games. They also shipped him Mike Leach, which is obviously known for his air raid offense, but you can't, go against a guy that's shown the pass catching prowess that put together a full-on production profile. He had 1,500 yards as a runner, the year before. It's whether or not he's going to get the draft capital, and that's really going to be where it is for these running backs as a whole. Sam, why don't you, for the last time, tee us off, give us one back beyond your top list that you have some interest in.
I like Jared Patterson.
Oh, God.
Playing for it. God damn it, Sam.
Sam, what the hell?
Said his name this entire list.
Yeah, there's a freaking reason I didn't say his name. We hadn't gotten to the bottom of the list yet.
I promise you, there's a reason why you should be looking at Jared.
40% dominator rating?
Is it because...
It's the fact that he's had 3 straight 1,000-yard plus seasons, including the 1,800-yard season in 2019. It's the fact that he's got 52 rushing touchdowns in the last 3 years. It's all of that. So for me, Jared Patterson is that guy that, he's definitely a shot. Nobody knows if he's going to be good.
I would bet not, but
obviously the odds are stacked against him. The last guy we saw that was this small, it was Donnell Pumphrey coming out of San Diego State. He got drafted
And
by
how'd that
Eagles.
go? We remember Donnell Pumphrey.
God damn it.
I like Donnell
Sam
Pumphrey.
remembers
I like
Out of
Donnell
the
Pumphrey.
year.
His tape was
Out of the
actually
year.
good.
Out of the year within a year. Out of the league within a year.
His tape was actually
Unbelievable.
good, though, unlike Jarrett
His tape
Patterson.
was very good. But Jarrett Patterson has the production. So I like Jarrett Patterson as a potential. I know he's tiny. I know he doesn't have any of, he's not an analytics darling. But I don't give a shit about analytics. I care about what I see on the field. And what I see is that Jarrett Patterson, who runs hard, he can do just about anything in between the tackles. He's not going to offer you much as a pass catcher. He didn't in college.
0 targets in 2020.
Yeah.
He had an
I saw that, but he did almost break the record for most.
So he's
yards.
Samaje P. Ryan.
Okay, do you want an actual note I have on Jarrett Patterson's film?
I would love to hear it. I would love to hear it.
If this were porn, not
I'm not gonna
football,
wanna hear it.
if this were porn, not football, he would be fired for hitting the wrong hole too much.
Oh, you hit the belly button, Jared. You hit the belly button.
He went into the
That's not
ear
vagina.
when he should have went into
He
the
went into the ear.
And not the vagina.
Actually, the first note I had, and Dan will appreciate this, was, oh, good, this year's Kalen Balazs. Because he had an 8-touchdown game.
Had him at this year's Devin Singletary.
I had a note on him that says he has enough speed to run through holes that look like they were open by Moses.
He just needs a shot. I promise you.
He's going to Buffalo. He's going to go to Buffalo. In
But
that
of
shit
course,
field.
that's his home. I'd rather see Jarrett Patterson than either of those two guys. And honestly, I grew up with Devin Singletary. I went to high school with the guy.
Oh, you did?
Of course, he was a freshman when I was a senior, but
Sure.
I saw him. I went to American Heritage, so not the plantation one, not where everyone good goes. I went to the Delray one where we recruit some of the talent, but not all of the talent. But it remains to be said that Jarrett Patterson, is one of those guys who's going to be a day 3 pick, but he could have a shot. He just needs a shot.
Would you like me to say something positive about Jarrett Patterson?
I think Sam
Since you
does
said
for the
nothing,
sake of his
something
psyche.
but negative about him, I'm sure I would love.
He's not the worst guy I watched.
Okay, that's
There are
That's
two
Jamar
people. There,
Jefferson.
no, Jamar Jefferson's ahead of him. There,
Oh, God.
Jamar Jefferson's ahead of him for me too.
he's one spot ahead of him, but he's ahead of him. There are two people behind him, actually, Elijah Mitchell and Trey Regis.
I like
Trey
Elijah
Ravens.
Mitchell. I like Elijah Mitchell. I was
He-
thinking about throwing him
God.
out there, but I just don't know enough about Mitchell. I know a little bit more about Patterson.
Okay, let me see if I can give you some notes on Elijah Mitchell here. Hold on. Let's see if I have anything witty written down about him. I know I have some about Trey Regis.
He's got the size and he's athletic. I think that's why people like him.
Mitchell, I've seen some people rank him as their wide.
Actually,
as
you know what?
But
You know what? I didn't really have anything wittily bad about Elijah Mitchell. I watched him because of the athletic profile, and he profiled really well, honestly. I just thought
which is why I
that
saw people rank him as their wide.
I just thought he struggled to get to the second level. He struggled to get into space, which is where his skills really show off. Is when he's in space. But if you don't get there, you can't show him. Thought he ran upright, went down super easy. Didn't move piles. Not a ton of ability to bulldoze through contact, and not a ton of agility on film. And again, that just goes to translation. Trey Regis is the worst person I watched.
I don't even know who that is, honestly.
He qualified based on productivity, and
Does he need to back up in Buffalo?
no, he played.
I thought Arkansas, but I wasn't sure.
He was a backup.
He's Louisiana. He's
was-
actually with.
Yeah, see, I know nothing.
He's actually with Elijah Mitchell.
He is with Elijah Mitchell.
I know nothing.
And for the pros for Trey Regis, I had nothing. There's one run where he looked fast, maybe.
That's terrible. Why are we talking
And
about
for
that?
cons, I said he might be running blindfolded half the time.
So he's the Caleb Lodge.
Yeah,
All right.
he's done.
So,
All right. Just like Elijah Mitchell, just like the running backs, I think I'm ready to fucking.
I'm going to give a couple names here real quick.
Okay.
Okay.
Deion Jackson.
Don't know who it is.
That's fine. I won't go. I could go into the spiel
He's
about
hurt
it.
by
I
right
won't.
now. He's so offended right now.
I'm not really offended
He's
by it.
not.
So
Deion
sorry
Jackson
for
profiled
listening
well
for
at
any reason.
Duke, I believe. I think.
Okay.
You just
Um,
made that guy up, Hooper.
He's not even
Damn you,
real.
Hooper. Damn you, Hooper.
no, it
Damn
was
you, Hooper.
it was Duke. Khalil Herbert is a guy people are biting
I
on
like-
him a lot.
I like
I actually
Khalil
like
Herbert.
Khalil. I like Khalil's film a lot. Jake Funk out of Maryland's a guy who was hurt.
I
like
heard about him. People are, he's a big sleeper.
yeah, because his athletic profile is freaking insane. And
Khalil
then
Herbert, I went to middle school with his brother.
nice. And then
How many
a
fucking people do you know?
A lot of people went to American Heritage. Look
Apparently.
it up. There's like 8 people in like the top 2 rounds of this draft that went to American Heritage.
And then-
I live in Florida. We recruit football talent.
That's fair.
small school guy, Jaquan Hardy. And Jaquan Hardy's a guy that I like at small school wise.
Okay.
So
Okay.
again, just a couple names. Nothing that I'm going to go too into right now. If they get drafted anywhere that either or even signed as a UDFA, anywhere that has any form of opportunity or anywhere that raises eyebrows, we'll discuss them. And tune in night 1 of the NFL draft where they won't be drafted and we don't have to discuss them, so never mind. But when we get into the recap episodes, if there's any form of draft capital or these UDFAs land anywhere that has a little bit of opportunity, we'll discuss them then. But until then, just names to know: Deion Jackson, Khalil Herbert, Jake Funk, Jaquan Hardy, not Jarrett Patterson. Sorry, Sam.
All right. One last time. Sam, why don't you tell the people where they can find you and your
You can find me at swagman95 on Twitter. You can find me at the show FF on Twitter. I write under 14 personnel for fantasy, 4th and Jawn for Eagles, and that's about it at this point.
John, tell the people one more time where they can find you and all your work.
At Superflex Dude on Twitter, host of the Superflex Super Show, and mayor of Superflex City. That's kind of it. I mean, I write from on occasion for DynastyLeagueFootball.com. You can find my Superflex Dynasty rankings there. Everyone hates them, but, go check them
I'll
out
check
and
'em
see
out.
why.
Especially
I'll
Stompy.
check 'em out.
All right. I am Dan. For Kris, we are Beer Fueled Podcasts. Thank you for tuning in. Kris, send us home.
Country roads take me home. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you next week. We're going to have more people on that I don't think we've actually corralled yet.
I will reach out to more people.
And talk wide receivers and tight ends. So wide receivers and then Kyle Pitts.
That's half firewood.
Yep.